Chapter 1673. Rumble. Under the tremor of the ground, sharp rock pillars sprang up one after another. In an instant they filled the entire space and turned into agile pythons. One after another, they violently rushed towards the center, mercilessly crashing down at the same time. Noah only felt that the sky suddenly darkened. From all directions of the venue, sharp rock pillars had already swept through the air and heavily fell from the sky. If his ability points were still there, Noah might not even need to dodge or block. He could rely on his powerful durability and magic to weaken physical attacks to resist this level of attack. But now, Noah's ability points had been left in the world between worlds to upgrade. His body had returned to the state before entering the dark bullet world. Relying on his current body, if he was hit by those sharp rock spikes, he would definitely end up riddled with holes. Therefore, Noah did not hesitate to chant the incantation. Magic array change exchange patterns collective change. The blue magic array imprinted in the space suddenly flashed, like a shield, surrounding Noah. Of course, the magic array did not have the ability to defend. As one of the two magic arrays that Noah had mastered after the integration of rune magic with the authority, these magic arrays were just a cannon. Apart from being a cannon, they did not have any other function. Therefore, after layer upon layer of magic arrays surrounded Noah, the blue magic arrays immediately lit up and gathered magic power. Cast. Magic flashes once again burst out from the magic arrays, causing beams of magic power to burst out in all directions, welcoming the rock spikes. Bang 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 bang. Shocking explosions rang out in the venue one after another. The huge rock thorns that came from all directions were directly blown apart by the magic light beams. The rock thorns exploded into rubble that filled the sky and fell to the ground, causing a burst of crackling sounds. Now, Jura's eyes flashed. Overlord rock shatter. The gravel that fell to the ground suddenly paused, then turned into bullets that suddenly shot in Noah's direction. Noah immediately tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, and like a rocket, he rushed towards the sky. The pieces of rubble that shot towards Noah suddenly collided with each other at his original position. The collision between the rocks was like the collision between bombs. It exploded and a burst of flames spread out. In an instant it covered a quarter of the entire venue, burning the ground until it was black. Noah, who was flying towards the sky, directly released the energy in his body to counteract the gravity and pressure. He floated in the air and looked down at the explosion below. He then raised his eyes and looked towards Jura's direction. Then it's my turn. Noah softly chanted. Magic array change, direct flow, collective release. The magic arrays covering Noah's body began to move again. As they rotated, they turned into turrets and aimed at Turtle Dove, gathering mana in them. Cast. Flashes of light burst out one after another, causing the magic power to turn into beams of light, causing a sharp sound of breaking through the air. They flashed through the space like a violent storm, falling from the sky and shrouding the ground below. Looking at the terrifying beams of light that fell like a storm, Jura mobilized all the magic power in his body. His robe fluttered as he roared. Rocky Mountain! Suddenly the ground around Jura began to squirm, and it began to change shape. It surged up like a wave and then twisted like clay. Finally, it turned into a statue that looked like a war god, covering Jura in it. The beams of light that fell from the sky were like raindrops, falling one by one on the huge statue. Pung 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 pung. Along with the sound of explosions, the beams of light exploded on the huge statue, stirring up flames and attacking the standing war god, causing the ground of the entire venue to shake once again. The audience didn't know how many times they cried out in alarm, but under the tremors of the ground, they became flustered. Monsters? Those two. Even the high mages from the famous guilds couldn't help but cry out, and then they began to stabilize their bodies in a fluster, trying not to be overturned by the tremors of the ground. In this way, only Noah, who was floating in the air, wasn't affected at all. He was still looking down. Pung 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 pung. The beams of magic power continued to explode from the magic arrays, as if they didn't cost money. They fell like raindrops, bombarding the war god's statue. The continuous bombardment not only caused the ground to shake more and more frequently, but it also caused the waves of fire to spread to the surroundings. It had already spread to the entire venue, burning the ground and the air, causing the temperature to rise little by little. In the venue, everyone was sweating due to the rising temperature. However, the war god statue didn't show any signs of falling apart under the bombardment of the magic cannons. It was still standing firmly protecting Jura. Looking at this scene, Noah raised his eyebrows. It's so tough. It seems that I don't need to show mercy. After saying that, Noah extended his hand towards the statue of the god of war. Magic array convergence, forward flow patterns complete. The magic arrays that turned into cannons suddenly rotated in the air like machines and gathered in front of Noah's palm. In an instant they overlapped one another, and in the blink of an eye, they formed an extremely complex and huge magic array. Clang! An unprecedented light flashed on the complex and huge magic array, causing waves of terrifying magic power to begin to gather inside. In the next moment, Noah suddenly opened his mouth. Cast! As soon as his voice fell, a dazzling light burst out from the magic array, turning into a beam of light that penetrated the sky and earth, and directly fell down. The beam of light evaporated the air, separated the waves of fire, and caused the space to tremble slightly. Then, under the horrified gazes of the audience, it landed on the huge war god statue. An earth-shattering roar resounded and rushed into the sky, causing the whole world to tremble in an instant. It was so piercing that everyone's eardrums were in severe pain. In that instant, everyone in Colossus could see a blinding flash of light blossoming in the hall of the giant egg. Like a tide, the light surged in all directions and covered the entire hall. No one knew how long this phenomenon lasted. It wasn't until the deafening sound disappeared that the dazzling light gradually dissipated, exposing the great demon battle arts exhibition ground to the air. Then, the audience who were covering their ears tentatively opened their eyes that were tightly closed because of the dazzling light and looked at the center of the venue. In the next second, everyone immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. What appeared in front of everyone was a real piece of scorched earth. The previously intact ground was not only covered with cracks, but it was also completely scorched black and emitted wisps of smoke. It was as if it had been burned by magma, causing the air to become somewhat dry and hot. The war god statue that protected Tura had long since disappeared, leaving only pieces of gravel covering the entire venue. In the air, Noah carried the unconscious Tura and slowly landed on the ground. Under the sluggish gazes of the audience, Noah indifferently opened his mouth. So the winner has been decided, right? His words woke everyone up from their stupor. The match is over. Chapati hurriedly announced. Winner. Fairy tale be Noah Dole. The cheers that were louder than any of the previous ones soared into the sky, announcing the end of the match. Chapter 1674. Under the cheers of the audience, Noah brought the fainted Kara back to the contestant area of Lamia scales and left her under their care. Then, he left under the awestruck gazes of Leo and Shirley, and returned to his own contestant area amidst the cheers of his companions. Looking at the smiling Noah under the support of his companions, the other high mages of the other guilds also looked at him in awe. Many people had already heard of the rumors about Noah. However, that was 7 years ago. Time was always merciless. 7 years was quite a long time. At the very least, it was enough to make people forget the glory of a person. There was a saying, seeing is believing but hearing is false. After 7 years, even though many people knew that Noah had killed one of the 10 great saint mages, it was just a rumor that couldn't arouse the reverence of others if they hadn't seen it with their own eyes. Not to mention when he killed Joseph, Noah did not personally make a move. Instead, he let the golden wolf Bio, who was still fused with his soul at that time, finish off Joseph. Thus, in the eyes of others, Noah was perhaps just a high mage who used a powerful tamed beast to achieve his glory. However, it was different now. Noah not only defeated a 10 great saint mage in front of everyone's eyes, but he also did not suffer a single injury during the whole process. He even looked quite relaxed. This way, even if people were not convinced, they had no choice but to accept it. Thus, in the audience, Noah's name was constantly mentioned. His appearance was also firmly engraved in the hearts of everyone who watched this match. In the contestant area of Raventail, Alexei looked at the completely scorched arena, the expression under his mask extremely uncertain. It was unknown whether or not he had sensed the uncertainty in Alexei's heart, but a short, fat, and annoying-looking fatty spoke in a low voice. Sir Alexei, do we still continue with our plan? Continue. Alexei gritted his teeth hatefully. I must obtain lumen starlight. But Lord Alexei, that Noah Dole is so strong. I'm worried that if we act carelessly, our plan might be exposed ahead of time, the short fatty reminded. What do you think we should do? Alexei's face darkened. However, it had to be said that Alexei was indeed worried about this. Looking at Noah, who was being supported by everyone in the contestant area of Fairy Tale, Alexei struggled in his heart for a while. In the end, he let out a light breath and said coldly, Then before we start the plan, let's not make a move against the members of Fairy Tale for the time being. If you guys come across any members of Fairy Tale, use your own strength to deal with them. Don't play tricks and ruin my plan. Got it. The short fatty agreed. Only then did Alexei's expression become better. Looking at Noah, who was being supported by everyone, he snorted coldly and turned his head away. At the same time, in the contestant area of Sabertooth, the group of magic shooters fell into silence. Looking at the venue that was severely scorched and recalling the terrifying magic power that erupted from Noah's body, and that pillar of light that pierced through the sky, the group of people couldn't help but clench their fists. In the end, it was Lucifer who broke the silence first. We have to admit that we underestimated this Noah Dole. To be able to easily deal with the power of the 10 great Saint Magi, that power is genuine. Roger also interjected, which was rare for him. He's much stronger than we thought. I know I don't need you to remind me. Christine was speechless. After we go back, I will be responsible for reporting this matter to the president and let him make a decision. Don't we need to call the young mistress back? Olga asked in a deep voice. If we don't gather the 5 strongest people, we might not be able to win against that guy. The young mistress is working outside now. It's estimated that she won't be able to come to Coloches until tomorrow, Lucifer said. If we call the young mistress back now, it might be very troublesome. There's no need to go to that extent. Christine pursed her lips. The Great Magic Combat Arts Competition isn't a one-person competition, but a guild competition. So what if he's the only strong one? If it's only one person, he won't be able to shake our Sabertooth's position as the strongest. Everyone nodded in agreement. The truth was indeed so. The Great Magic Combat Arts Competition was a competition between guilds. No matter how strong Noah was under the constraints of the rules, he wouldn't be able to reverse the situation. Not to mention other things, just for the duel, the contestants were all decided by the organizers. Noah might not be chosen to fight. And as long as Noah couldn't fight, this person was nothing to worry about. As for the competition, it wasn't necessarily a competition of strength. It wasn't certain who would win and who would lose. Therefore, although Christine and the others already looked at Noah in a new light, they didn't panic because of it. Besides, no matter how strong Noah was, it had nothing to do with Christine and the others. After all, the opponent that Christine and Roger had their eyes on wasn't Noah in the first place. There's only one person I want to fight. Christine's eyes flashed with a sharp light. Nazdo Lagner, if you don't have the strength of Noah Dole, then just wait to kneel in front of me. Gadjaloo. Roger's eyes also flashed. You were once mercilessly defeated by Noah Dole. How strong are you now? Let me see. As for Lucifer and Olga, they didn't have any opponents that they wanted, so they fell silent. Ignoring the conversation of Christine and the others, Xuanai just kept looking in the direction of Noah, her eyes rippling with a strange light. Lord Noah, you are indeed the strongest, but I won't lose to you. No, I can't lose. When the various guilds began to pay attention to Noah, no one noticed. In the corner of the spectator seats, there was a person wearing a black robe and a hood. His face couldn't be seen clearly at all. This person was staring at Noah, who was being supported by his companions in the guild. He couldn't believe it and squeezed out this sentence in a panic. Who is he? There's no such person in the guild. Not a single person paid attention to this sentence. After Noah's match ended, there were 3 more matches. However, these 3 matches weren't as interesting as the one between Noah and Jura. The matchups of the 3 matches are as follows. Blue Pegasus vs Mermaid Heel. Sabertooth vs Cotter Cerberus. Fairy Tale Team vs Raventail. In the first match, Lotus from Blue Pegasus took the field and fought against a member of Mermaid Heel. In the end, Lotus won. In the second match, Olga from Sabertooth fought against a member of Cotter Cerberus and also won. The third match was between Lucy from Fairy Tail A and a girl named Freya from Raventail. She was a member of Fairy Tail, and her opponent was Lucy from Fairy Tail A. Freya was also a member of Raventail. In the end, perhaps because of Alexi's instructions, Freya didn't show off too much and was defeated by Lucy, who had learned how to double open the door. Just like this, the two teams of Fairy Tail won at the same time in the duel, and both earned a valuable 10 points, causing the guild's ranking to jump to the top. Chapter 1675. Thus, the first day of the Great Magic Battle Exhibition came to an end. As the sun gradually began to set in the west, the spectators began to walk out of the stadium one by one. On one hand, they were talking about today's match, and on the other, they were looking forward to tomorrow's match. It had to be said that today's competition could indeed be considered exciting. In the PvP segment, the audience saw with their own eyes the strength of the strongest guild, Sabertooth. During the duel segment, the audience saw with their own eyes how terrifying Fairy Tail, once known as the strongest guild in the game, was. Noah and UNI's performance made the audience leave the venue with great satisfaction, and they were looking forward to tomorrow's competition. And these people did not realize it. Among the topics they talked about, the name Fairy Tail, which was despised by everyone before today, kept popping up. The so-called mortals were so realistic. Before Fairy Tail had shown enough ability, everyone looked down on it. And after Fairy Tail displayed enough power, everyone began to revere it again. In the end, for these people, the world of sorcerers was a world that was difficult to reach. Therefore, the rise of Fairy Tail did not hurt or itch these people at all. As long as the following competition was exciting enough, then for these ordinary people it was enough. Of course, at best, it was only for ordinary people. For those sorcerers, the power displayed by Fairy Tail and Sabertooth today would definitely make many people think about it. Would Fairy Tail be the one to regain their past glory? Or would Sabertooth continue to maintain the title of the strongest? Everyone began to discuss animatedly, and they were looking forward to it. Under such circumstances, no one realized. Unknowingly, they had already begun to compare Fairy Tail with Sabertooth. Similarly, no one realized. At this moment, at the top of the dome, a man wearing armor was looking down at the crowd that was gradually flowing out of the venue. His face was extremely solemn. This person was impressively the commander of the Fiori Kingdom's Sakura Knights that had a short conflict with Noah yesterday, Alcardios. Finally, the Great Demonic Combat Arts Exhibition is about to begin again. Alcardios muttered to himself. This year is already the 7th year, right? Up until this year, the Great Magic Battle Exhibition had been held for a total of 7 years. 7 years of time was enough to turn the once glorious Fairy Tail into a bottom-feeder guild. It was also enough for the once insignificant Sabertooth to rise up and become the strongest guild in the game. But for the kingdom, these were not that important. The reason why the kingdom held the Great Magic Battle Exhibition was not to entertain the people, but for their own purpose. This purpose very few people knew. And Alcardios just so happened to be one of the core figures. In order to carry out the kingdom's plan, we spent 7 years preparing. With the Great Magic Battle Exhibition as bait, we made the Magic Guide Guild from all over the kingdom gather here every year, and let the elites of these guilds compete in order to collect a large amount of magic. Alcardios slowly raised the corner of his mouth. It seems that after this year's Great Magic Battle Exhibition, we will be able to collect all the magic we need. It would take 7 years to collect the magic power. One could only imagine how much magic power the kingdom required. At least, Alcardios was prepared to use more time to collect the magic. But this year there was an anomaly. Noah Dole. To think that he could possess such a level of magic power on his own. What a frightening sorcerer. Alcardios recalled the scene with his own eyes today, and revealed a smile with lingering fear and unusual excitement. However, thanks to him, the amount of mana we'll be able to gather this year will definitely be greater than any of the previous years. Once this year's Great Demon Battle Exhibition is over, we'll definitely be able to gather all the mana we need. Not only that, in addition to the large amount of magic, Alcardios and the kingdom's plan required the assistance of another kind of person. Archmages of the Star Spirits. The smile on Alcardios' face became wider. I didn't expect that 2 archmages of the star spirits would appear in this year's Great Magic Battle exhibition. It's as if fate is starting to help us. The so-called star spirit magic was an ancient magic that summoned the star spirits of a total of 88 constellations from the star spirit world for one's own use. This ancient magic was not only very rare, but it was also said that if the key to the top of the 88 constellations was collected, it could even be used to change one's fate. To this day, there were only a few people who could use this magic in the entire Fiori Kingdom, and the kingdom's plan just happened to require the power of archmages of the star spirits. For this reason, in the 7 years of collecting magic, the kingdom had spared no effort in searching for archmages of the star spirits. In the end, they could not find a single one. Originally, the kingdom was prepared to give up on searching for archmages of the star spirits and use magic similar to archmages of the star spirits as a substitute to start the plan. Who knew that 2 archmages of the star spirits would appear in this year's Great Magic Battle exhibition? Moreover, those 2 archmages of the star spirits have a certain degree of relationship with Noah Dole. This is really too much of a coincidence. Alcardios looked up at the sky and spread out his hands, loudly declaring, "Noah Dole! Lucy Hatfilia! Snow Agulia! I'm here, looking forward to you being the last key to completing our plan. The last key to completing our solar eclipse plan." On the other side, Fairy Tale, who had left the venue, did not directly return to the hotel. Instead, they went to the bar and started eating and drinking. The reason for doing so was actually very simple. Apart from needing to fill their stomachs, they also wanted to celebrate the victory of the first battle of the day. Even though in the PvP segment, because of Snow's strength that exceeded everyone's expectations, Fairy Tale didn't obtain a complete victory, but Gray and Julian weren't just for show either, obtaining 4 points and 3 points for their respective teams. In addition, Noah and Lucy had both won the duel, and won the most important 10 points. The 2 teams were now at the top of the rankings. They were only below Sabretooth, who had won 10 points in both the duel and the duel. If this continued, it was not impossible for them to return to the first place. Not to mention Makarov, even members such as Makarov and Wakaba, who were not optimistic about participating in the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition before, couldn't help but shout loudly that they needed to celebrate. So a group of Fairy Tale's magic shooters gathered in a bar, eating and drinking while making a ruckus. It seemed that they were going to make a ruckus for the whole night. In the direction of the bar, Noah was holding a glass of wine, looking at his companions who were making a ruckus, but he was lost in thought. Looking at Noah like this, Makarov, who was already a little drunk, couldn't help but wonder, "What are you thinking about?" Hearing this, Noah hesitated for a moment, then said to Makarov, "Grandpa, did you notice that today's Great Demonic Combat Arts competition seemed a little strange?" Chapter 1676. Strange Place. Makarov was stunned. However, after hearing Noah's words, the drunkenness in Makarov's mind disappeared. Because Makarov knew that since Noah said so, it meant that he had discovered something. Makarov was very clear about his grandson's ability. If Noah had really discovered something, then this matter was most likely not as simple as it seemed. Thus Makarov asked directly, "Could it be that you discovered something?" "Yes." Noah nodded and reminded him, "Grandfather, do you still remember the competition of mana between Tura and I before the start of the competition? How could I forget that kind of thing?" Makarov sighed. "I reckon that no one who saw that scene would be able to forget it, right?" That was not an exaggeration. After all, Noah and Tura had both used pure mana to cause a natural phenomenon. That level of mana was indeed very shocking. Not to mention Kuragu. Noah's magic almost destroyed the entire Fur-Bird egg. Who could forget that kind of scene? At least, as a magic shooter, Makarov would not be able to forget that shocking scene. However, Makarov was only happy about it. Since young, Noah's mana had been different from ordinary people. Before he started learning magic, he was already much stronger than Makarov, who was one of the 10 great Saint Magi. He had even gone berserk and almost destroyed the guild. Because of this, Makarov had let Noah train his mana control since young, and never let Noah learn magic. From then on, Makarov knew. In the future, Noah was destined to soar to the sky. Noah did not disappoint Makarov's expectations. 7 years ago, Noah had already killed one of the 10 great Saint Magi. Back at Skywolf Island, Noah had even killed Hades, who was far more powerful than Makarov, who was one of the top 10 Saint Magi. Therefore, Makarov wasn't surprised at all about Noah's victory over Dura. What Makarov was truly surprised was that Noah's mana had grown to an unimaginable level. That level of mana had caused a phenomenon. If not for the fact that Makarov already knew about Noah's mana when he was young and trusted Noah's character, he would have thought that Noah had used the power of lumen starlight to display that level of mana. While Makarov was sighing, Noah suddenly said something. In fact, when I was competing with Tura today, I discovered that the mana I released was being absorbed by something. Your mana was being absorbed. Makarov raised his head in surprise and looked at Noah. What's going on? I also don't know, Noah said, somewhat distressed. That's why I asked Grandpa if you found anything strange. After noticing that his mana was being absorbed, Noah deliberately released his perception ability in the next few duels in an attempt to find something. In the end, Noah discovered that it wasn't just him. The other high mages would more or less lose a small amount of mana when using magic. If this small amount of mana was lost under normal circumstances, it would definitely be discovered by the high mages themselves. But during a battle, high mages needed to consume mana, and that level of mana loss was not easy to detect. Only Noah, with his superb perception ability, could discover this phenomenon. If it had been anyone else, they really wouldn't have been able to discover it. Mana has been sucked away? Makarov put down the wine glass in his hand, and his wrinkled brows began to furrow. This problem can be big or small. If the mana of the high mages being absorbed was just a coincidence or a natural phenomenon, then there was nothing strange about it. This world was full of all kinds of magical miracles. Sometimes some strange occurrences were similar to natural occurrences, and there was nothing strange about it. But if it was a man-made problem, then it was different. For example, the king of the world of Edras once had designs on Aslan's mana, and didn't hesitate to use the super subspace magic, Anima, to turn Aslan's high mages into magic crystals and use them as consumables. That was a matter of life and death, and couldn't be ignored. Another example was Jalal. In order to recreate the forbidden magic that could resurrect people, spent 8 years and used a large amount of magic crystals to build the Paradise Tower, and used it to activate the forbidden magic called our system. That was a problem that involved taboos, and couldn't be ignored. In this world of magic, the so-called mana was that important. Therefore, the existence of lumen starlight was something that transcended time. With it, any kind of forbidden magic could be used at will, and there was no need to spend time to collect mana. If it fell into the hands of evil people, it would be like the third perpetual motion mechanism that was abused, and would only be reduced to an element that could destroy mankind. If the mana of the high mages that appeared in the Great Magic Battle Exhibition had been artificially absorbed and collected, then there would be a need to worry about whether someone wanted to use that mana to use forbidden spells or magic-conducting weapons that could endanger humans. Thinking of this, Makarov spoke solemnly. Could it be that Ivan did something evil to get his hands on lumen starlight? I've thought about it too, Noah agreed. It's just that when fighting with Lucy Freya, who belonged to Raventail, also had a small part of her mana sucked away. If it was Raventail who did it, then there was no reason to absorb the mana of her own people. You're right. Makarov nodded. It seems that it's necessary to investigate this matter a little. I don't think this matter is that simple. Noah looked at Makarov and instructed. So, Grandpa, if you plan to investigate, don't make too big of a move, so as not to arouse the vigilance of the mastermind behind the scenes, and attract unnecessary trouble. Your consideration is right. Makarov replied in agreement. Don't worry. I'll investigate in secret and won't let the matter leak out. Only then did Noah's expression relax a little. At this time, Alessia came to Noah with a joyful expression. Looking at Alessia's happy face, Noah asked curiously, "What makes you so happy?" "It's indeed something to be happy about." Alessia smiled. "Noah, if you're free now, why don't you come with me? Go out." Noah blinked. "Where are we going?" "To see someone." The smile on Alessia's face didn't disappear as she said so. "No, to be more precise, it should be 2 people. Hearing this, Noah's heart moved as he vaguely knew who Alessia wanted him to see. Under the lead of Alessia, Noah walked out of the hotel and walked to one of the streets of Kolochis. Not long after, Noah and Alessia came to a park. and in the park, two figures were standing there talking about something. Looking at the two figures standing in the park, Noah, who had already guessed who Elisha wanted him to see, thought in his mind. Standing there were two members of the mermaid heel. One was Kagura. The other was the black-robed person who looked at Noah with ridicule and mockery during the qualifier. However, the latter's black robe had been taken off, revealing her original appearance. Taking a closer look, it was a rather sexy and beautiful girl. She wore clothes that looked like a bikini but also looked like a restraint suit. Her hairstyle was like a cat's, with cat ears protruding like a cat's, and even a cat's tail on her back. She looked like a beautiful cat girl. Noah also knew this girl. And it was 7 years ago in the Paradise Tower. It was Mariana. Chapter 1677. At this time, Kagura and Milyana, who were talking about something, also noticed Noah and Elisha walking into the park and cast their gazes at them. Little Elu. Milyana waved at Elisha happily, then looked at Noah and winked mischievously. Little Noah, you're finally here. Don't call me Little Noah. Noah said helplessly. Unlike us, you haven't been stopped for 7 years. You're 7 years older, why are you still so naughty? It's because 7 years have passed. I'm older than you now. Isn't it good to call you Little Noah? Milyana giggled. And I've always been like this. After all, I have the strongest vitality. Hearing this, Noah couldn't help but smile, but he didn't really feel that it was bad. Seeing that Noah wasn't very surprised, Elisha felt strange. Noah, did you already know that Milyana had joined the mermaid heel? I only found out yesterday. Noah explained. After I passed the preliminaries, I asked Grandpa to help me find information on the 8 teams participating in the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition. It was then that I found out that Milyana had joined the mermaid heel. Similarly, Noah also knew that the black-robed person in the mermaid heel was Milyana at that time. So when Elisha asked Noah to come out and meet people with a happy face, Noah guessed that Elisha had discovered Milyana's true colors. What? Elisha said with some annoyance. Since you already know about Milyana, why did you ask me to help you investigate? I told you, I only found out after I went back and asked Grandpa to find the information. Noah smiled bitterly. Well, anyway, that's why you found out Milyana's true colors, right? That's right. Milyana hugged Elisha and rubbed Elisha's face while speaking cheerfully. To be honest, when little Elu came to the Mermaid Heel Hotel to find me, I was shocked. I planned to wait until the end of the Great Demon Battle Arts competition to reveal my true colors. Since you're here, you should have met me earlier. Elisha didn't refuse Milyana's intimacy, but she reprimanded her. I missed you guys. I missed you too, little Elu. Milyana smiled and hugged Elisha tightly. Hugh, Simon and Wooly and the others missed you too. By the way, since you've joined the Mermaid Heel, what about Simon and the others? Noah asked. Did they also join a guild? No, I'm the only one who joined a guild. Simon and the others are still traveling. Milyana let go of Elisha and hugged Kagura. Besides, I only joined because little Kagura is in the mermaid heel. Hearing this, Noah and Elisha turned their gazes to Kagura. Under Noah and Elisha's gazes, Kagura gently pushed away Milyana and came to Noah. Kagura raised her head and looked at Noah with a serious expression. I've wanted to see you for a long time. I can see that. Noah met Kagura's gaze and said directly, since it's already like this, please allow me to ask you a question. Do we know each other? As early as the first time they met, Kagura had shown a certain degree of interest in Noah. Although it wasn't as serious as Yukino's, Noah knew that Kagura also had some connection with him. It wasn't until he learned that Milyana was in the mermaid heel that Noah felt that perhaps Kagura was paying attention to him solely because of Milyana. Unfortunately, Noah guessed incorrectly. We really don't know each other, Kagura said. But my older brother has mentioned you in front of me more than once, and he's praised you a lot. Older brother? That's your older brother, right? Noah said in surprise. Your older brother knows me? The one who answered this question wasn't Kagura, but Milyana. Don't be scared, Milyana said with a mischievous smile. Kagura-chan is actually Simon's younger sister, his biological younger sister. Simon's younger sister? Noah looked at Kagura in surprise. You're Simon's younger sister? What? Elisha also stood up in surprise and looked at Kagura with surprise. You're Simon's younger sister? As early as when the Tower of Paradise incident was resolved, Simon mentioned to everyone that he had a younger sister who had been separated from him since he was a child. In order to find his younger sister's whereabouts, as well as to see the world, Simon took Milyana, Zio, and Wooly on a trip together. This Kagura in front of them was actually Simon's younger sister? Presumably, you already know that my older brother and I were separated from each other when we were young. All these years I've been searching for my older brother's whereabouts, Kagura explained. It wasn't until a few years ago that I finally found my older brother and learned about what happened to him all these years. I also learned about your existence from my older brother. Especially you, Mr. Noah. My older brother already told me that the reason why he was released from the Tower of Paradise was because you defeated Jalal and awakened him. Kagura gripped the katana in her hand tightly and bowed deeply to Noah. For this, I can only offer you the highest level of gratitude. This kindness, I will definitely remember it in my heart. If there's anything you need me for, please don't hesitate to tell me. As long as it's something I can do, I will do my best. Both Kagura's expression and tone were incredibly sincere when she said this. Obviously, these words all came from Kagura's heart. Under such circumstances, Noah and Alusha finally recovered from their shock, looked at each other, and then smiled faintly. At that moment, Noah spread his hands and said so. If that's the case, why don't you show me some mercy if we meet in the competition? I can't do that. Kagura raised her head and looked at Noah with an extremely solemn expression. Your Excellency's strength is very strong. If you show me mercy, I don't have the confidence to win against you. Is that so? Noah smiled faintly. To be praised as the strongest archmage in this year's Great Demon Combat Arts competition, except for that Rock Iron Kara, is really something to be proud of. It's a pity that even Rock Iron Kara was easily defeated by Your Excellency. Kagura's expression slightly relaxed, but she still said so. So, when facing Your Excellency, I will definitely not show you mercy. Please be prepared. Of course. Noah nodded. I will remember it in my heart. Okay. Let's stop with the greetings of our first meeting, Mariana said in an extremely lively manner. Since everyone is already familiar with each other, let's go eat together. Noah, Alusha, and Kagura all nodded without any objections. Just like this, the reason why Kagura showed a certain degree of concern towards Noah finally understood. However, while one doubt was solved, more doubts still existed in Noah's heart. For example, why was Yuno so obsessed with Noah? What was the matter with the magic absorption phenomenon that occurred in the giant egg, for bird? Could it be that there was some secret behind the great demonic martial arts exhibition ceremony? Was Raventail, who was staring at lumen starlight, secretly planning something? One question after another remained unanswered. Almost instinctively, Noah had a faint premonition in his heart. The so-called Great Demon Combat Arts Competition Festival might not be as simple as it seemed on the surface. This time's trip to the King's City might bring about some unavoidable things. However, no matter what happened as the Archmage of Fairy Tale, Noah would never compromise and would fight to the end. Chapter 1678. The next day, the residents of Clocaska woke up early as usual, full of anticipation, as they waited for the start of the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition. The people who had tickets couldn't wait any longer and started to move towards the venue. One by one, they entered the giant egg for bird. As for those without tickets, they gathered in places with projection magic crystals, such as bars, hotels, and restaurants. As they enjoyed their breakfast, they discussed what would happen in today's competition, never tiring of conversation. The group of sorcerers belonging to Fairy Tale did not waste any time. When the sun rose, they hastily finished their breakfast and began to move towards the direction of the huge egg, for bird. Along the way, many people were pointing at the members of Fairy Tale and gossiping about them in private. If it had been before yesterday, these people would not have been as simple as pointing and discussing. However, after yesterday's exciting performance, no one dared to look down on Fairy Tale now. They could only cast curious and respectful gazes at Fairy Tale's group. Suddenly, Makao and Wakaba, who had been looked down upon for 7 years, felt a sense of pride rise in their hearts. Even their backs straightened a lot. Thus, the group arrived at Egg for Bird together. Because the contestants and the audience entered from different passageways, Noah's group of 10 contestants separated from Fairy Tale's group and went to another passageway. In the end, they met an unexpected opponent. "Oh, aren't you guys from Fairy Tale?" Sting, who had entered the contestant passageway with Logue, Lucius, Alyaga, and Shuanai, noticed Noah's group. He immediately stopped and looked around at everyone present. Finally, his gaze stopped on Naz, and the corners of his mouth slowly rose. "This is really a fortuitous encounter. I can't believe we met here." Logue, who was walking with Sting, immediately looked at Gadjaloo with a cold glint in his eyes. As for Shuanai, she naturally looked straight at Noah. As usual, she only had eyes for Noah. Under such circumstances, Lucius and Alyaga actually looked at the same person. Lucius was looking at Gray. Alyaga was looking at Laxus. The group of people looked at each other from a distance. The sight that met in midair seemed to be able to ignite sparks, and there was a slight smell of gunpowder in the air. The rest of the sorcerers from Fairy Tale, who were not targeted by Sabertooth's group, noticed something else that surprised them. That was, besides Sting and Logue, were two cats. The two cats, like Heibi, Xiaolulu, and Lily, walked on two legs just like humans. Next to Sting was a cat wearing a vest. Next to Logue was a cat wearing a frog costume. Looking at the two cats, Lucy exclaimed in surprise. Could it be that they are surpassers from the world of Edras like Heibi, Xiaolulu, and Lily? Her words attracted everyone's attention to the two cats. How rude. I forgot to introduce our companions. Sting curled his lips and smiled. Rector, come out and say hello to everyone from Fairy Tale. Hello everyone, the surpasser named Rector said pretentiously as he adjusted his vest. Flossie, come out and say hello. Yes, sir. The surpasser named Flossie replied slowly and raised his hand. I'm Flossie. Rector is my companion. Flossie is Logue's companion. Sting grinned. I heard you have a companion like Flossie? Naz? Heibi is a cat. Naz pointed at Flossie, who was wearing a frog costume. Undoubtedly, this one is a dog. Is there something wrong with your eyes? Gray ridiculed mercilessly. Undoubtedly, that's a frog. Are you Nazi Kuan? Rector sized Naz up and then said as if he had lost interest. I heard that you are a dragon-slaying archmage like Sting and Logue. I was looking forward to it, but it seems that you have let me down. Rector's words shocked everyone present. Noah was also surprised and looked at Sting and Logue. The same dragon-slaying archmage? Wendy exclaimed as she looked at Sting and Logue. Are you also dragon-slaying archmages? Immediately, Gadjaloo and Raxus cast their gazes towards Justin and Logue. It wasn't until then that Noah faintly felt it. Sting and Logue did have the same type of magic as Naz, Gadjaloo, Wendy, and Laxus. It was the magic of a dragon. Smell it carefully. The two of you do have the smell of a dragon. Gadjaloo stared at Sting and Logue. So, you are also dragon-slaying archmages? That's right. The corners of Sting's mouth rose. However, we are also dragon-slaying archmages. As the third generation, we are not on the same level as the first and second generation. First generation. Elisha frowned. What do you mean? Hearing this, Rector took a step forward and began to explain. The first generation refers to the archmages who were personally taught the Dragon Slayer magic by the dragon. For example, the Dragon Slayer archmages of the Fire Dragon, the Dragon Slayer archmages of the Iron Dragon, and the Dragon Slayer archmages of the Sky Dragon are very typical of the first generation of Dragon Slayer archmages. Rector said slowly. The second generation refers to the archmages who have magic crystals with dragon-slaying magic buried in their bodies. For example, the Thunder Dragon's dragon-slaying archmages are second-generation dragon-slaying archmages. As for the third generation, it refers to dragon-slaying archmages like Sting and Logue. Rector puffed out his chest, as if he was talking about himself, and spoke very proudly. There are dragons who personally teach dragon-slaying magic and bury magic crystals of the same attribute in their bodies. This is the third-generation dragon-slaying archmages. By the way, I am the White Dragon's dragon-slaying archmage, and Logue is the Shadow Dragon's dragon-slaying archmage. Sting spread his hands and smiled proudly at Naz. Although I have no interest in being a dragon-slaying archmage of the old generation, don't look at me like this. In fact, I grew up listening to Brother Naz's legends when I was young. I have admired you since I was a child. At this point, The smile on Sting's face became somewhat sinister. He clenched a fist and stared at Naz. That's why I have to defeat you and prove that I have surpassed you. Same for me, Gadjaloo. Logue raised his eyes and looked straight at Gadjaloo. I grew up listening to your legend since I was a child. I will defeat you with my own hands and prove that I am stronger than you. Hearing this, Noah understood why Sting and Logue had been paying so much attention to Naz and Gadjaloo. It turned out that there was such a reason. You. Gadjaloo's gaze became somewhat dangerous. If you can do it, then give it a try. Naz grinned, his eyes burning with fighting spirit. That's exactly what I want. Thus, the gazes of the dragon-slaying archmages collided once again, stirring up sparks. At this time, Aulyaga glanced at Laxus and smiled coldly. Although I am not a dragon-slaying archmage, I know how to use lightning-attributed magic. Thunder Dragon over there, are you interested in exchanging a few moves? Laxus didn't answer, only narrowing his eyes. Lucius pressed down on his hat and smiled elegantly. My magic isn't the same as yours. It's just a creation magic, said Yizichin. Sculpt magic. Gray immediately reacted and stared at Lucifer. And Shuanai is a star elemental archmage. Sting shrugged. It seems that we do have a lot of similarities. Chapter 1679. After hearing Sting's words, the group of fairy tale magic shooters fell silent. Come to think of it, Fairy Tale Sorcerer and Saber-Tooth Sorcerer did have a lot of similarities. At the very least, the group of magic shooters here had many similarities. Naz, Gadjaloo, Wendy, Sting, and Rog were all Dragon Slayer magic shooters. Laxus and Aulyaga were both thunder magic shooters of the Annihilation system. Gray and Lucius were both creation magic shooters. Lucy and Snow were both star magic shooters. In addition, Fairy Tale and Sabertooth were once the strongest guild in the kingdom, and the current strongest guild in the kingdom. There were so many coincidences that made it seem like it was fated to happen. However, at this moment Noah suddenly spoke. Why does your Sabertooth want to be the strongest guild? The sudden question stunned the group of Sabertooth's magic shooters. When they reacted, Sting was the first to laugh out loud. I thought you wanted to ask something, but it's actually such a question. Do we need a reason to be the strongest? Hearing this, Noah laughed, laughing very disapprovingly. Then Noah said, That's right. If that's the case, then we are indeed different from you. Sting and the others were stunned. Under such circumstances, Noah took a step forward and came in front of everyone. His gaze swept over Sting, Rog, Lucius, Aulyaga, and Yukinai. After a while he said word by word. The so-called guild is a place where companions, family, and friends gather. Only when everyone gathers together can it be called a guild. Therefore, we will fight for our companions and become the strongest. As for you, you're just fighting for your reputation at best. You're not on the same level as our beliefs. Noah said resolutely. So we are different. No, it should be said that you can't compare to us. What did you say? Sting, Logue, Lucifer, and Aulyaga were all enraged. Only Shuanai's heart shuddered slightly after hearing Noah's words. He lowered his head and bit his lips. On the other hand, the members of Fairy Tale all showed expressions of agreement. When they looked at the members of Saber-Tooth, their gazes no longer carried any emotions. In the eyes of the magic shooters from Saber-Tooth, it was as if he was looking down on them from above. Thus fury rose in the hearts of Sting and the others. However, before they could make a move, Noah turned around as if he didn't want to be entangled with them anymore. Let's go. After saying that, Noah ignored Sting and the others and walked toward the venue. The rest of his companions followed suit one by one, as if they did not want to talk to Saber-Tooth's group anymore. They all walked into the venue together. Wait! Sting shouted. Are you trying to escape? Everyone ignored Sting and continued to walk forward. That action caused the anger in Sting's heart to rise to the peak. Soon after, he was so angry that he laughed. Very well, since that's the case, I will participate in the competition later. Let me completely crush your useless self-confidence. This sentence made Noah stop in his tracks. He turned his head and looked at Sting with an undeniable smile. Likewise, likewise. Just wait and see if your useless self-confidence will be crushed. After saying that, Noah didn't say anything else. He led the members of Fairy Tale into the venue, leaving Sting and the others behind. The anger in their hearts couldn't be quelled for a long time. Behind Sting and the others, Snow looked straight at Noah's departing figure. She recalled Noah's words just now, and her eyes were full of uncertainty. Become the strongest for the sake of your companions? After leaving the field of vision of Sting and the others, Naz immediately spoke. Hey Alusha, Naz said. Let me participate in the competition later. Everyone's eyes immediately gathered on Naz. Seeing that Naz's face was full of fighting spirit, Alusha, Gray, Lucy, and Wendy looked at each other. Clearly, Naz's fighting spirit had been ignited by Sting. As a high mage of the dragon-slaying realm, Naz should also have the idea of competing with Justin, right? Thus Alusha nodded. Then I'll leave it to you, Naz. Okay. Naz hammered his palm, his eyes burning with fighting spirit. I'm burning up. In that case, I'll go on our side. Gajaloo also said, unwilling to be outdone. I've been annoyed by those guys for a long time. Mira, Julian, and Laxus's eyes suddenly gathered on Noah. If the leader of Team A was Alusha, then the leader of Team B was undoubtedly Noah. In this regard, Noah just pondered for a while before looking at Gajaloo. This time, I won't allow myself to lose to someone from Sabertooth. Even so, do you still plan to fight? You won't allow yourself to lose. Gajaloo revealed a rather dangerous grin. Just what I want. Looking at the dangerous smile on Gajaloo's face and the strong will in his eyes, Noah stared at Gajaloo for a while before finally nodding. Then I'll leave it to you. Hello everyone. It's time for the Great Demon Battle show to begin again. I'm your live reporter, Chabadi Laura. I'll be looking forward to today's show. On the rostrum of the Dome for Bird, Chapati picked up the microphone and greeted the audience who were cheering loudly. He then introduced Ajima, who was next to him. The person in charge of commentary is still our Mr. Ajma, and the distinguished guest we've invited today is a reporter from Magic Weekly, Mr. Jason. Magic Weekly. Cool. The reporter named Jason shook his arms very excitedly, as if he had been stimulated by something, or simply shocked by lightning, making people unable to ridicule him. Ignoring Jason like this, Chabadi continued to report. After yesterday's Great Demon Battle show, the rankings of the top 8 guilds have changed to a certain extent. The current rankings are as follows. First place, Sabertooth, 20p. Second place, Fairy Tail A Team 14p. Third place, Fairy Tail B Team 13p. Fourth place, Blue Pegasus 12p. Fifth place, Lamia Scale 8p. Sixth place, Raven Tail 6p. Seventh place, Mermaid Heel 1p. Eighth place, Cotter Cerberus 0p. The guild that took the first place is the guild that everyone is familiar with, Sabertooth. No wonder they are the strongest guild in the past. Chapati explained enthusiastically. However, behind them our Fairy Tail is also closely following. There are actually 2 teams occupying the second and third place respectively. It's really unbelievable. The strongest guild in the past is really not just for show. After today's competition, what kind of changes will happen? Let's wait and see. Chabadi announced. Then the second day of the Great Demon Battle show begins now. Chapter 1680. Accompanied by the loud sound of wheels, wooden chariots drove through the streets of Kolochis in a grandiose manner. The wooden war chariots were all connected together by iron chains, forming a long line. Amidst the loud sound of wheels, the chariots moved at a steady speed towards the direction of the giant egg frage. On the moving wooden chariots, a group of magic shooters were racing. That's right, it was a race. Through the projection magic crystal set up in Egg for Bird, the magic shooters and the audience from all over the continent could clearly see the entire process of the race. However, it was precisely because of this that all the audience fell into a very strange state of silence when they saw the situation on the projection magic crystal. In particular, the magic shooters from Fairy Tail and Sabertooth had already entered an extremely speechless state. There was no other reason other than the fact that the outcome of the competition was beyond everyone's expectations. The competition on the second day of the Great Demonic Combat Arts Exhibition competition was about chariots. The rules of this competition were very simple. It was to let the contestants of the 8 teams race on the chariots. During the race, the contestants could not fall off the chariot. Once they touched the ground outside the chariot, they would be eliminated. During this period there were no restrictions on the use of magic, nor were there any restrictions on the use of any means. As long as they did not fall off the chariot and successfully reach the finish line, it would be considered over. Finally, according to the order of arrival at the finish line, the teams of each guild would receive different points. It was such a simple competition. However, it was precisely because of this competition that the audience in the entire venue was speechless. The reason was because of the situation shown in the last projection magic crystal. Woo! In the last part of the wooden chariots that were moving towards the flattened egg, 3 sorcerers were lying on the chariots with ashen faces. They were like worms that were constantly wriggling forward. Those 3 people were Naz, Gadjaloo, and Sting. The contestants of the other teams had already far surpassed these 3 people, and opened up a distance that was absolutely impossible to surpass. Only Naz, Gadjaloo, and Sting were lying on the chariot like worms, crawling forward with great difficulty. Seeing this scene, the audience looked at each other in dismay. Looking at this scene, the sorcerers belonging to Sabertooth lowered their heads in shame, as if they had no face to see anyone. Looking at this scene, the faces of everyone from Fairy Tail twitched. Looking at this scene, Noah almost covered his face. He really couldn't bear to continue watching. Under the strange atmosphere, Chabadi helplessly picked up the microphone and said this with a face full of shame. Looks like the contestants from the top 3 teams are all suffering from motion sickness. The audience fell silent. Then they burst into laughter. What? So, even the former strongest guild and the current strongest guild have weaknesses? Come on. At least you're still opponents. Don't fall to last place. Good luck. Ha 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 ha. The laughter of goodwill and ridicule continued to echo in the field. After yesterday's exciting competition, everyone had already compared Fairy Tail to Sabertooth. After yesterday, the battle between the 2 guilds had been the topic of the audience. Everyone was looking forward to it. Today, would Fairy Tail and Sabertooth be able to give equally exciting matches? In the end, in the next day's competition, the 2 guilds that had become the hot topic actually performed so amazingly, which made many people happy. The so-called competition was like this. For the audience, it was actually just entertainment. Therefore, these people would cheer if the performance was wonderful, and they would also cheer if the performance was interesting. As long as they were happy, it was enough for these people. Therefore, the performance of Fairy Tail and Sabertooth not only did not cause the audience to be disappointed, but also made the audience feel incomparably happy, and their popularity became even more exuberant. However, that was understandable. The top 3 teams were reduced to this point because of motion sickness, which really made people not know whether to laugh or cry. In this way, the top 3 contestants would undoubtedly occupy the last 3 positions in this competition. The audience couldn't help but laugh out loud at this unexpected outcome. It seems that Naz and Gadjaloo won't be able to win many points for us. Mira held her cheek with one hand and looked helpless. Fortunately, Sting of Sabertooth is the same, otherwise it would be too disadvantageous for us. That guy named Sting also can't do anything about transportation. Is that really the weakness of the Dragon Slayer magic shooter? Jubian was puzzled. Also, undoubtedly, when you see the word chariot, you can more or less expect the content of the competition to be related to transportation. Why did you let Mr. Naz and Mr. Gadjaloo play? Those 2 idiots insisted on playing, saying that if they didn't play, it would be considered as running away, so they had to play no matter what. Laxus curled his lips and said, I guess that the Dragon Slayer magic shooter of Sabertooth also said that he wanted to play and was afraid that he wouldn't be able to get off the stage, so he braced himself and played together with them, right? What the hell is this? Noah didn't know what to say. Previously, when we were confronting each other, you spoke so highly of yourself. In the end, regardless of whether it was Fairy Tail or Sabertooth, both of them ended up like this. Doesn't this make you look like a fool? Well, at least Naz and Gadjaloo haven't given up yet. Mira still looked a little helpless, but she comforted him gently. As long as they don't lose to Sabertooth, it's fine. In fact, although Naz and Gadjaloo's faces were ashen, they insisted on crawling forward, pulling away from Sting little by little. Sting's face was ugly at this result. He wanted to crawl forward like Naz and Gadjaloo, but he couldn't do it no matter what. Sting, who understood how difficult it was to move forward in a state of motion sickness, finally had a trace of puzzlement and shock. Why Why can Naz and Gadjaloo insist on moving forward but I can't? It wasn't until this time that Sting remembered Noah's words. The so-called guild is a place where companions, family, and friends gather. Only when everyone gathers together can it be called a guild. So we will fight for our companions and become the strongest. And you, at best, are fighting for your reputation, which is not at the same level as our beliefs. So we are different. No, it should be said that you can't compare to us. Thinking of those words at that time, Sting clenched his teeth and fell silent. Is this the difference between me and them? Is this the reason why they can move forward? Could this be the fairy tale? With these doubts, in the end, Sting was unable to surpass Naz and Gadjaloo. Naz and Gadjaloo took away the 6th and 7th places respectively, obtaining 2 and 1 points, while he himself got 0 points. Under such circumstances, Sting silently returned to the contestant area amidst the laughter of the audience. The previous provocation of Fairy Tale ended with Sting's complete defeat. However, the conflict between the two guilds did not stop there. Next up is the first duel of the day. Fairy Tale B Team Noah Dole vs Sabertooth Shuanai. Chapter 1681. What? Sting, who had just returned to the contestants' area, did not even have time to say a word before he was awakened by this unexpected pairing. Shuanai versus that man? Rog, Lucius, and Audiobook were equally shocked. As for Shuanai, she was even more stunned. When she came to her senses, her eyes shone with an unprecedented brilliance, and her jade-like hands slowly clenched and trembled under her coat. It was not because of fear but because of excitement. Finally, she could display her strength in front of that lord. How lucky she was. At this moment, Shuanai was only excited and not fearful at all. On the contrary, the expressions of Sting, Rog, Lucius, and Audiobook gradually darkened, because there was no other way. Although Shuanai's strength was not bad, there was still a huge gap between her and one of the 10 great Saint Magi. And her opponent was someone who could easily deal with Jula, who was ranked 5th among the 10 great Saint Magi. Against such an opponent, Shuanai did not have the slightest chance of winning. Hence, the expressions of Sting and the rest were incomparably ugly. On the other side, Noah also showed a somewhat stunned expression because of this unexpected match. How could this be? Julian was caught off guard. It's actually Sir Noah versus that Star Soul Archmage named Shuanai? Not only Julian, but even Laxes and Gadjaloo looked at Noah in surprise. Previously, Shuanai's persistence towards Noah was something everyone had seen clearly. Although they did not know what relationship Noah had with Shuanai, this matter was definitely not simple. In the end, the organizer actually let Noah and Shuanai have a direct duel. Could it be that this was the so-called fate? Noah! Mira could not help but hug Noah's arm with a worried expression. Hearing Myra's call, Noah gradually withdrew his astonished expression and turned his head to look at Mira. Looking at the worried expression on Myra's face, Noah reached out and patted Myra's hand that was tightly hugging his arm as he spoke softly. Don't worry. I'll be fine. But you still don't know what kind of past you have with that child called Shuanai. Mira seemed to be a little worried. It's too difficult for you to fight that child like this. After all, without knowing what kind of past he had with Shuanai, Noah had no idea where to start. If he was careless and hurt the persistence in Shuanai's heart, it might cause that seemingly strong young girl's heart to shatter into pieces. This way, how could Noah make a move on Shuanai? To be honest, I don't know how to fight that girl named Shuanai. Noah laughed bitterly. However, this is something that I must face. Perhaps she and I are destined to end this. Closure. Yes, closure. Although he didn't remember what kind of relationship he had with that girl named Shuanai, her persistence towards Noah was real. This reminded Noah of Versilia Eva's persistence towards Liena Subble in the world of Elven Sword Dance. Liena Subble had once taken down Versilia in the Elven Sword Dance Festival, but she didn't put Versilia in her eyes from the beginning to the end. That extremely prideful Elven had once fallen, and did not hesitate to harm her body and future in order to compete with the strongest sword dancer. Why did Versilia not hesitate to go to such extent to win against Lien? The reason wasn't it to make Lien, who once didn't even look at her, take her seriously? Then, putting himself in her shoes, Noah's life was almost the same as Liena Subble's. It could only be described as a legend. Didn't he hurt some people unintentionally? The answer perhaps was yes. And this person was very likely to be Xuanai. Perhaps even Xuanai was just one of them. That was hard to say. Therefore, Noah couldn't avoid facing Xuanai. Previously, Noah had been thinking about how to solve Xuanai's problem. However, Noah had been unable to find an answer for a long time. Now the Great Demonic Arts Festival had directly pushed Noah in front of Xuanai. Then perhaps this was the world telling Noah. In order to not have any regrets before the final battle, he had to face the girl's persistence. Other than that, there was no other solution. I have to fight this round. Noah gently stroked Myra's head. Don't worry about me. There will always be a way. Hearing this, Mira opened her mouth, but nothing came out. After a while, Mira smiled. Her delicate face revealed a gentle expression that was no different from before. I believe in you. Noah returned a smile and hugged Mira into his arms. After kissing Myra's forehead, he let go of his fiancée in his arms and walked into the arena under the gaze of his companions. At the same time, Xuanai also slowly walked into the arena under the gaze of her companions. Not long after, Noah and Xuanai entered the arena at the same time. Their gazes instantly met in midair. Oh! The audience in the arena burst into cheers. Not to mention the audience, even Chapati on the rostrum raised his voice and reported excitedly. Now walking into the arena are Noah Doria from Fairy Tale and Xuanai Agulia from Saber-Tooth. In yesterday's competition, both of them had shown extraordinary strength to everyone in the competition segment and duel segment. Today, both of them will meet in the first round of the duel segment. They are the magic shooters from the former and current strongest guilds respectively. This battle will not disappoint us. No matter which side it is, both of them are very powerful. Yajma gave a compliment. I sincerely hope that both of them can have a regret-free competition, and let us see the excellence of both guilds. No regrets. Cool. No regrets. Cool. Even Jason started to babble nonsense. The atmosphere in the arena was completely brought to a climax. Immediately, cheers resounded in the air above the venue, stirring up the hearts of the contestants of each team. However, Noah and Xuanai did not seem to hear the resounding cheers. They looked straight at each other and remained silent. I've been waiting for this moment to come. After a long while, Xuanai broke the silence and revealed her inner thoughts. In order to show my strength in front of you, I've been persistently training for the past 7 years. Now the time has finally come. Xuanai raised her hand and held a star essence key tightly. Her eyes were like torches as she stared at Noah. You don't have to be merciful. I won't be merciful either. I'll show you all of my strength. From Xuanai's words, Noah could clearly feel an extraordinary strong will. One could imagine what kind of feelings Xuanai had when she said those words. In response, Noah only took a deep breath and met Xuanai's gaze. If you really wish to fight with me, I can satisfy you. Noah looked straight into Xuanai's eyes and said, however, I hope that after the battle, you can tell me everything. Everything. Xuanai tightened the key in her hand and lowered her head as she muttered softly. What are you referring to? The connection between us, Noah said directly. I don't remember where I met you, nor do I remember what happened between us. I only vaguely remember the name Xuanai. Xuanai remained silent, but her hand that was holding the star essence key tightened. After a while, Xuanai squeezed out a sentence. It's natural that you don't remember me. To you it's just an insignificant interlude. However, to me it's something that I'll never forget in my life. Rather, I'm already very touched that you still remember my name. After saying that, Xuanai raised her head and looked at Noah. Beat me and I'll tell you everything. The corner of Noah's mouth lifted slightly. Chapter 1682. Then, on the rostrum, Chabadi glanced at Noah and then at Xuanai. After confirming that both of them were ready, he raised his hand. The first duel of the second day of the Great Demonic Arts Exhibition, Fairy Tale B Team Noah Doria vs Saber-Tooth Xuanai Agulia. Begin. As soon as the announcement of the start of the duel, Xuanai immediately took a step back and raised the key in her hand. She began to mobilize all the magic in her body, causing the majestic magic to surge up and infuse into the star soul key in her hand. Hum! Accompanied by a slight tremor, the star soul key that was tightly held in Xuanai's hand suddenly bloomed with light. That light gave everyone present a huge shock. because the light that bloomed from the Star Soul key in Xuanai's hand was not the golden light that symbolized the Star Soul of the 12 zodiac gates, but an ominous purple-black light. The ominous black light not only surprised everyone around, it even made Noah frown a little. There was no other reason. At this moment Noah clearly felt it. In the air, an extremely sticky feeling began to surge like a swamp. Then bursts of purplish-black fog appeared without any warning and filled the entire venue. Poison. Noah's frown deepened. No, this is not poison. Not only Noah, but the rest of the people who saw this scene with their own eyes were also puzzled. What is that? Elisha's expression slightly froze. It feels very bad. The smell of the air has changed. Wendy's nose twitched cutely. Her little face became a little uncomfortable. That's a very dangerous smell. What is that Xuanai planning to do? Gray was puzzled. I have a bad feeling about this. Lucy's face was even more bewildered. That key doesn't seem to be the key to the 12 zodiac gates. After being reminded by Lucy, everyone realized that. In Xuanai's hand, the key that was emitting an ominous purple-black light was not a bright golden color. That key was completely black in color. Furthermore, there was a black snake coiling around it. It wasn't just the luster. Even its appearance was very strange. Holding this key, Xuanai said to Noah in an extremely serious manner, "If I only rely on the power of the 12 zodiac gates, I have no hope of defeating you. Therefore, I will directly use my greatest trump card, the power of the 13th gate. The power of the 13th door." Noah was stunned. The power of the 13th door? The others were also stunned. Only Lucy sucked in a breath of cold air. It can't be? Does the girl called Xuanai have the key to the 13th door? Do you know what's going on? Gray quickly asked. The so-called 13th door. I've only heard of it. Lucy couldn't help but step forward. She came to the guardrail and leaned forward slightly. Looking at the key in Xuanai's hand, she said in shock. It is said that above the 12 zodiac gates, there is actually an unknown star spirit that is independent of the 12 constellations. That is the 13th star spirit. While Lucy was explaining, Xuanai had already raised the ominous key in her hand. The power of the star spirit represented by the 13th door far surpasses that of the 12 zodiac gates. This is my greatest trump card, and also my greatest strength. Now it's time to open this door. Xuanai raised the key that was emitting ominous light high up. As if she was singing, she shouted loudly. Open! The door of Ophiuchus constellation Ophiuchus. The ominous light emitted from the star spirit key with the black snake coiling around it suddenly flourished. It turned into a burst of black light and instantly enveloped the entire venue. Ding dong! As if there was a light bell ringing, a pitch-black magic formation rotated from the star spirit key that Xuanai raised up high. Immediately after, everyone in the venue showed a horrified expression, because a huge black shadow burst out from the pitch-black magic formation. Against the whistling atmosphere, it rushed into the air and appeared in the venue that was covered in black fog. It was a snake. It was a gigantic black snake that was at least several hundred meters long. It was thicker than a pillar that several adults would need to wrap their arms around. It had a machine-like appearance and was covered in layers of scales. Hiss! A bone-chilling shriek rang out. The huge black snake named Ophiuchus slowly wriggled its body. Its pair of snake eyes stared at Noah below. As the snake hissed, the black fog in the surrounding space fluctuated slightly. That appearance, that scene, and that hiss all made people feel a bone-piercing chill in their hearts, causing the surrounding audience to show a horrified expression. Ophiuchus. Xuanai pointed the key that was emitting a purple-black light in her hand at Noah's direction and ordered without hesitation. Go! The murderous glint in Ophiuchus's snake eyes immediately intensified. Whoosh! In the next second, a huge snake tail carried an extremely strong whistling sound as it swept through the space. It stirred up the surrounding black fog, separated the raging wind, and smashed heavily in Noah's direction. Looking at the huge snake tail that was whizzing over, Noah's eyes focused. Without any hesitation, he tapped the ground and retreated quickly. His figure was extremely agile as he leaped out. The huge snake tail that was whizzing over suddenly landed on the ground. With a loud noise, the hard ground was completely blasted open. A large piece of it sunk down and stirred up gravel. Kacha kacha kacha. Cracks like a spider web that fell heavily on the ground and spread out around the snake tail that smashed the ground. In a moment it spread out to dozens of meters away. Seeing this scene with his own eyes, Noah's eyes narrowed slightly. Before he could do anything, a deep sonic boom suddenly sounded above his head. Noah abruptly stopped in his tracks and raised his head to look at the sky above him. Suddenly a huge shadow carrying an unparalleled terrifying power fiercely crashed down, imprinted in Noah's eyes. That huge black shadow was the head of Ophucus. The huge head fiercely slammed into the ground, causing an incomparably ferocious force to erupt, shattering the rocky ground, setting off a dense dust and shockwaves, causing stone fragments to flutter in the air. However, while the dust and sand were spreading, a figure suddenly rushed out from the rising dust cloud and shot into the sky. Immediately, it landed on top of Ophucus's head. Seeing this, Xuan'ai ordered, "Ophucus, throw him down." The huge snake named Ophucus immediately let out a long hiss, suddenly twisted its body, and scuttled into the sky. The terrifying centrifugal force and pressure directly acted on Noah, who was standing on top of Ophucus's head. If it was an ordinary person, he would have been thrown out and fell to the ground, directly falling to his death. Unfortunately, Noah was not an ordinary person. Even if he had lost his ability points now, the 3 to 4 years of training was not for show. Therefore, Noah was like a gecko, crouching down and tightly grabbing onto Ophucus's scales with one hand. He stood firmly on top of Ophucus's head, and no matter how Ophucus tried to escape, he did not throw him off. That scene was simply like a knight who had tamed a divine dragon. It was very majestic. "Oh!" The audience began to exclaim in surprise. However, Xuan'ai felt anxious and shouted loudly, "Ophucus!" Ophucus suddenly let out a long hiss, turned around in midair, and scuttled downwards. He fell from the sky and hit the ground with his head again. Amidst the muffled explosion, a dense dust cloud once again shook the venue, causing the ground to tremble slightly. However, before that, Noah had already jumped down from Ophucus's head and landed on the ground. The whole process was as smooth as flowing water. The audience was not stingy with their cheers, and they cheered for Noah. Chapter 1683. Hiss. In the hazy black fog, Ophucus' hisses resounded. One could faintly hear the anger in his voice. The huge black python seemed to be roaming in space. It twisted its huge body agilely and coiled around Xuan'ai. Its huge head hung down from midair. Its pair of snake eyes stared intently at Noah. There was an unusually dense, ferocious glint in its eyes. Obviously, after a series of attacks, it was unable to do anything to Noah at all. This fact made the Ophiuchus star spirit, who was known as the 13th door that was even higher than the 12 zodiac gates, feel unusually furious. Of course, it wasn't just Ophucus. Xuan'ai also felt a little anxious. She held the pitch-black star spirit key that was emitting an ominous purplish-black light, and looked at Noah with a sharp gaze. Then Xuan'ai said these words, "Why aren't you attacking?" Knowing how powerful Noah was, Xuan'ai immediately used her biggest trump card at the start of the match, bringing out her greatest strength. However, compared to Xuan'ai, Noah didn't use any of his strength from the beginning to the end. He only dodged continuously and circled around Ophucus without launching an attack at all. If Noah used the magic that could continuously shoot out magical light beams like he did against Jura yesterday, Xuan'ai might have been defeated by now. Xuan'ai, who was clearly aware of this, had been wary of Noah's magic cannon. In the end, Noah didn't use it at all and didn't even launch an attack. This made Xuan'ai, who was full of energy from the beginning, just to let Noah see her growth, feel like she was being looked down upon and betrayed. She couldn't help but feel a dark emotion rising in her heart. Under Xuan'ai's sharp gaze, Noah only slowly opened and closed his hand. After being silent for a while, he suddenly opened his mouth and spoke. After a moment of silence, he suddenly said, "Because I don't know how much power I should use to deal with you." Upon hearing this, Xuan'ai was slightly taken aback, and then some anger finally appeared in her eyes. "In other words, are you looking down on me? No, you're very strong. Even in my guild, your strength is definitely enough to rank in the top 10 magic shooters. Other than the president, only the current S-rank magic shooters in the guild can guarantee a complete victory over you." Noah shook his head and looked directly at Xuan'ai. "However, I'm an exception." "An exception?" Xuanai frowned in confusion. What do you mean? Although it sounds like I'm boasting, I have to tell you. Noah smiled indifferently. Actually, with my current strength, I probably can't be compared to humans, right? His words, that sentence, which caused an uproar in the surroundings. Not only the audience, but also the other magic casters from the other guilds couldn't help but sneered at Lin. Admittedly, Noah was indeed very strong. He could easily defeat even the 5th-ranked Great Magus Saint. In the past, he had even killed a Great Magus Saint. But even so, to say that he was above all humans no matter who it was a joke. Only the main members of Fairy Tail couldn't help but recall the battle between Noah and Echinalia on Celestial Wolf Island. At that time, the strength that Noah displayed was simply comparable to that of a demon god. Even the Black Dragon Echinalia, who had destroyed a huge country in Revelation, was able to fight evenly with him. Could that kind of strength be compared to humans? Therefore, the main members of Fairy Tail were collectively silent. Of course, even the main members of Fairy Tail did not know about this. In fact, at that time, the reason why Noah was able to fight Echinalia to a draw was that his authority had not yet been adapted to this world and couldn't be used. Otherwise, if Noah could even kill a god, Echinalia naturally wouldn't be a problem. Even if the power of authority was excluded, compared to that time, the current Noah was only stronger. Although at that time the powerful Gate of Babylon was no longer by his side and the ability value that gave Noah astonishing physical strength was also lost, the current Noah had strength that he didn't have at that time. For example, the 3rd perpetual motion mechanism's soul. For example, Aster, who had recovered all the power that even the Elven King, who was the elemental incarnation of the world, was afraid of. Another example was Athena, who had assimilated with the Blade of Salvation that could even cut stars. With these powers, even if Noah lost his authority, ability value, and treasury, he still wouldn't be weaker than when he fought Echinalia on Celestial Wolf Island. Thus, ignoring the clamor around him, Noah looked at the astonished Xuanai and said, "Do you know how much power I used when I fought Jula?" The surroundings suddenly became silent. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, confusion written all over their faces. And those high mages from the major guilds all had shocked expressions. This was especially true for the members of Lamia Scales. They couldn't help but stand up. What does he mean by that? Leo asked in shock and anger. Could it be that when he fought Mr. Jula, he didn't use his full strength? Liar. Surely, Leah shouted indignantly. That's definitely a lie. Among the shocked and angry high mages of Lamia Scale, Jula didn't say anything. His eyes were fixed on Noah's body, and his eyes began to flicker. Under such circumstances, Noah spoke bluntly. I'll be direct. At that time, the power I used was probably less than 1% of my full strength, right? Hearing this sentence clearly, everyone opened their eyes wide. Jula's eyes suddenly set off waves, and finally, he laughed bitterly. Less than 1%. What a joke! Leo said angrily. How could that kind of thing be true? It wasn't just the Lamia Scale sorcerer. Everyone present snorted in contempt. This included the members of Saber-Tooth. There should be a limit to boasting, Audiobook said sarcastically. Using less than 1% of his power to easily defeat the 5th of the 10 great Saint Mages? Does he really think that people will believe such words? Sting, Roger, and Lucifer also had a look of ridicule on their faces. The surrounding audience suddenly began to point at Noah, obviously not believing Noah's words at all. Noah acted as if he didn't hear the clamor and mockery from the surroundings, and continued to speak. So, from the beginning, I didn't think of using my full strength in this great demon battle drill. As long as I can guarantee victory, that's enough. At this point, Noah looked directly at Xuanai. However, facing you, I'm somewhat conflicted. If I don't use my full strength, I feel that I'm really looking down on you. Because of this, I didn't make a move. But now I've decided. Noah said word by word. I'll let you see the extent of my power now. After saying this, Noah raised his hand, and with a flash, a small sword suddenly appeared in his hand. It was a small sword that was completely platinum in color. Athena, Noah said softly. Is there a problem? A voice immediately sounded in Noah's heart. Facing such an opponent, you still need to use me. I really can't do anything about you. Athena smiled sweetly. However, this concubine is already yours. We are destined to be together, so you can do whatever you want with me. The corners of Noah's mouth slowly rose. At this moment, the endless energy in Noah's body was transformed into divine might. Like a wild flow of turbulence, it surged into the small platinum sword in his hand under Noah's control. Clang! Immediately, a dazzling radiance as bright as the sun blossomed from the small platinum sword. That brilliance illuminated the entire world. Chapter 1684. Clang! The dazzling platinum light that was as bright as the sun turned into tens of thousands of rays of light that bloomed in the center of the venue. It surged out like a tide and instantly covered the entire area. It was so dazzling that it was hard to imagine. Everyone in the venue cried out in surprise one after another. Then their entire field of vision was pierced by the dazzling light, and they all subconsciously closed their eyes. At this moment, the thick black fog that filled the entire venue was dispersed by the platinum light. The pitch-black giant snake Ophucus let out a sharp cry, its voice filled with confusion. At this moment, no one's field of vision was not filled by the dazzling platinum light, causing a commotion. However, amidst the commotion, an extremely clear voice reverberated like a chant. Divine starlight, lightning of salvation, goddess wisdom, indestructible steel sword appear in my hand. It was a language that no one in this world could understand. This was because it was an elven incantation written in the elven language. It did not belong to this world at all. Therefore, everyone could only hear a series of incomprehensible and mysterious incantations. Then, the platinum light that illuminated the entire area surged and became even more dazzling. In order to adapt to the dazzling platinum light, the people in the venue did not know how much time they had to use. When their field of vision had more or less recovered a little, the audience that filled the entire venue finally realized. The platinum light that filled the entire area originated from a sword that was completely platinum in color, as bright as the sun, blooming with tens of thousands of rays of light. Such a mystical and sacred sword was now tightly held in Noah's hand. He raised it high into the sky and released a dazzling light to the surroundings. Staring at the sacred platinum sword, everyone in the venue became absent-minded at this moment, including Xuanai. That? Xuanai said with great difficulty. What is that? Hearing Xuanai's voice, Noah slowly retracted the divine blade that was raised high into the sky. He pointed it diagonally to the ground and softly said, "This is a divine sword that can even sever a star. Its name is Heavenly Sword of Salvation." Heavenly Sword of Salvation. Xuanai's voice was filled with uncertainty. A divine sword that can even sever a star? What a joke. He must be joking. How could such a weapon exist in this world? This was Xuanai's thought, and also the thought of everyone in the venue. Everyone thought that Noah was definitely joking. However, no one present was able to voice their thoughts as they stared at the platinum sword that seemed to absorb all the light in the world, shining as resplendently as the sun. Their faces were filled with uncertainty. Then Noah said, "I know you don't believe me," Noah said faintly. "However, you will soon believe it." After he finished speaking, Xuanai of the world, Heavenly Sword of Salvation. Buzz. Following a clear trembling sound that seemed to reverberate in everyone's heart, the dazzling light that bloomed from the Heavenly Sword of Salvation suddenly rushed into the sky. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Amidst the piercing sounds of the air being torn apart, streaks of platinum light shot up into the sky and converged above the giant egg, gradually condensing into a sphere. Like a celestial body, it continued to emit dazzling light as it rotated. Not long after, a huge platinum sun that was larger than the entire giant egg, with a diameter of more than 1,000 meters, suddenly appeared under everyone's gaze. It burst forth with terrifying fluctuations that shook the entire space, causing the surrounding space to slightly distort. Looking at the huge platinum sun that was suspended above, everyone's mouth was wide open, and their faces were filled with horror. At this moment, even the most ordinary spectator understood what was going on. What he was looking up to was the light of salvation that could bring hope to everyone, and also bring death to everyone. When the platinum sun fell from the sky, even if it was the planet itself, it would directly penetrate to the deepest part of the planet's core. That was a scene that would only appear in dreams. That scene was both sacred and terrifying. Impossible. Justin looked up at the platinum sun, as if he had lost his soul, and murmured lifelessly. Impossible. That kind of thing, Lucius said in a trembling voice. How could there be? Monster. Alyaga's voice was filled with fear. That guy is a monster. Is that his true power? Even Rog stared at the sun in the sky in a daze, his hands trembling slightly. Is that why humans can't be compared to him? Without a doubt, that was not a power that humans could resist. In the face of such power, even the strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom, what could they do? Facing such power, as long as they were human, they could only look up. That was because in the face of such power, humans were just too insignificant. If even the entire human race was so insignificant, then the so-called strongest guild in the kingdom was even more insignificant. Hence, regardless of whether it was the most ordinary spectator or an existence known as one of the 10 strongest Saint Archmages of the continent, they could only look up at the incomparably dazzling sun at this moment, falling into an inextricable state of shock. Hiss! The Ophiuchus star spirit called Ophiuchus roared at the sun in the sky, but his voice was filled with fear. Xuanai couldn't help but take 2 steps back, her entire body trembling, and her eyes filled with horror. Looking at Xuanai, Noah's voice was so calm that it was terrifying. Surrender. It was a simple sentence, but it made Xuanai's heart tremble. Xuanai clenched her teeth, desperately trying to raise the star spirit key in her hand, but she didn't know why she couldn't exert any strength, causing the hand that was holding the star spirit key to tremble uncontrollably. Looking at the elven magic device called Heavenly Sword of Salvation, raised up high, and easily created a sun, displaying terrifying power, Xuanai's heart was filled with despair. There was no chance of winning. There was absolutely no chance of winning. Even if she fought back, he only needed to gently wave the heavenly sword in his hand, and everything would be over. Not only the girl called Xuanai, it wasn't just the star spirit named Ophiuchus. As long as Noah waved the heavenly sword of salvation in his hand, the sun in the sky would fall, then including the mountain where the giant egg Fractoria sat, including the city of Crocus in the center of the Fiori Kingdom, everything would disappear in an instant. Therefore, Xuanai had no chance of winning. No. In the face of such power, even if all the humans in this world combined, they still had no chance of winning. Understanding this point, the star spirit key in Xuanai's hand finally slid down. Ding! With a crisp sound, the jet-black star spirit key fell to the ground, and the purplish-black radiance on it disappeared bit by bit. Hiss! Ophiuchus let out a sigh of relief, and his figure also disappeared in the air, returning to the star spirit realm. As for Xuanai, she directly knelt on the ground with her hands on the ground, lowered her head, and her delicate body kept trembling. After a long time, Xuanai finally squeezed out a voice as if she was sobbing. I surrender. This voice was extremely clear. Because other than this voice, there was no other voice in the venue. In the eerily silent venue, Xuanai's voice finally woke up Chabadi on the rostrum, and he reflexively picked up the microphone and stuttered. Xuanai surrenders. Therefore, the winner is Noah Doria from Fairy Tale B Team. Thus, the winner was decided. Chapter 1685. Buzz! In the sky, the dazzling platinum sun suddenly turned. With a slight tremor, it slowly disintegrated into streaks of platinum light and dissipated into the air. It wasn't until the platinum sun had completely disappeared that the audience could finally relax their hearts. In the end, almost everyone realized. Their faces, backs, and hands were all covered in cold sweat. It was only at this moment that people began to feel a strong sense of fear. Thus, everyone present looked at Noah in the middle of the venue. Their eyes were completely different. Only then did people understand just how powerful was Noah Dole's existence. With such a degree of power, it was no wonder that he dared to claim that humans could not be compared to him. That was not an exaggeration but a statement of fact. At least they could be sure that in this world, there was absolutely no human who could be a match for him. The so-called 10 great saint sorcerers in front of that platinum sun was probably just a joke. Even the sorcerers in the famous guilds understood this point. Thus, in the contestant area of Lamia scale, Turtledove let out a long sigh and spoke from the bottom of her heart. I am not as good as him, there is no need to even compare. The sorcerers from the Lamia scale fell silent. The sorcerers from Saber-Tooth were silent. The sorcerers from the Blue Pegasus fell silent. The sorcerers from the Mermaid Heel fell silent. The sorcerers from the Cotter Cerberus fell silent. The sorcerers from Fairy Tale were also silent. As long as they witnessed the scene just now, when they heard Tura's words, they were all silent, because they could not refute. Only in the contestant area of Raven Tail, Alix was excited, staring at the heavenly sword of salvation, in Noah's hand that was still shining with a dazzling platinum light. Alexi's heart was indescribably excited. That is definitely a magic weapon developed by using the power of lumen starlight. It is definitely so. After all, there was no need to even think about how much magic power a magic weapon that could create such a terrifying sun would consume when it was used. If there was not a huge amount of magic power to support such a weapon, it would be absolutely impossible to use it. Logically speaking, such a weapon, even if it was only used once, would require more than 1 billion magic power. In other words, only by gathering the magic power of more than 1 billion sorcerers could one use such a level of power once. That level of magic power without the support of the eternal magic power, lumen starlight. How could it be casually used for a demonstration? In fact, Alix's thoughts were indeed correct to a certain extent. If there was not enough divine power to support it, then the power of the heavenly sword that could even cut a star would not be able to be used. However, Noah did not need to rely on lumen starlight at all. Relying on his own strength, it was enough to display all the power of the heavenly sword. Therefore, Alix did not know that Noah himself was a different kind of lumen starlight. So that's how it is, so lumen starlight is in Noah Doria's hands. The greed in Alix's heart finally erupted. I must get it. No matter if it is lumen starlight or that weapon. They all belong to me. Noah, who did not know the feelings of the others, only looked at Xuanai, who was sitting paralyzed on the ground, raised his foot and walked over. During this process, the heavenly sword of salvation in Noah's hand turned into a burst of light particles and turned back into a small platinum sword. It was pinned to his waist. Then Noah came in front of Xuanai, looked down at Xuanai, who was sitting there paralyzed, and said softly, "Just like what we agreed on, I hope you can tell me everything." Xuanai lowered his head and did not speak. After a while, Xuanai took out a key from his pocket and showed it to Noah. That key was not the extremely precious golden key of the 12 zodiac gates, nor was it the key of the 13th gate, which was even more valuable than the 12 zodiac gates. It was only the cheapest star elemental key. The star elemental that was summoned using this star elemental key, it was estimated that, not to mention having a certain degree of power, it would not be strange for it to only have ornamental value. Such a star elemental key could even be bought in an ordinary magic tool shop. However, such a key, not only did Xuanai use a string to string it together, he even hung it around his neck and hid it in his clothes. Obviously, to Xuanai, this was a star elemental key that was even more precious than the 12 zodiac gates. Holding this star elemental key, Xuanai said softly, "This is the key you gave me 7 years ago." "I gave you the key?" Noah was stunned. However, in the next second, a thought flashed through Noah's mind. Needless to say, Noah did not know star elemental magic at all, so he naturally did not have a star elemental key on him. However, 7 years ago, when he first met Lucy, Lucy gave a star elemental key as a gift to Noah. And by chance, Noah gave that key to a little girl. A little girl who was bullied by a few gangsters in an alley and was saved by him. At that time, Noah and Levi went to the jewelry store together to order engagement rings for Mira and Lisanna. It was at that time that Noah met that little girl by chance. He still remembered that the little girl had snow-white hair that leaned towards blue. Moreover, she introduced herself like this. "My name is Xuanai." The memories of the past were instantly recalled by Noah all at once. "You?" Noah looked at Xuanai in bewilderment and said uncertainly, "You're the child in the alley at that time?" Hearing this, Xuanai tightened her grip on the key. She finally raised her head and looked at Noah. "So, you still remember me?" At this moment, a smile finally appeared on Xuanai's face. However, that smile seemed a little sad. "At that time, Lord Noah told me that he hoped that I could become a powerful magic shooter. In order to live up to your expectations, I have been training hard all these years. I only hope that one day, I can stand proudly in front of you and tell you that I have become a powerful magic shooter." Xuanai's expression became a little self-deprecating as she said this. "It's a pity that I didn't understand how weak I was until now." "You." Noah opened his mouth and sighed softly. "You're not weak. I've said it before, you're already very strong. But to you I'm incomparably weak." Xuanai bit her lips and closed her eyes as a drop of tear rolled down her cheek. "The current me is simply unable to stand beside you, let alone stand before you. You said that you were a magic shooter from the strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom. It was because of this that I joined Saber-Tooth." Xuanai's voice was laced with tears. "But you're not there at all. You're a liar." Noah fell silent and looked at Xuanai with a complicated gaze. At this moment, Noah finally understood why Xuanai asked him to leave Fairy Tail and join Saber-Tooth. It wasn't because Xuanai looked down on Fairy Tail. This young girl only hoped to join the same guild as him. Unfortunately, fate made a fool of people and made this young girl walk on a path that was completely different from her dreams. Now that the two of them had finally crossed paths, Xuanai naturally wanted to make up for her past regrets. That was why Xuanai appeared in front of Noah. Chapter 1686. Actually, at that time, if Noah had directly told Xuanai that he was the sorcerer of Fairy Tail, then this girl would not have suffered so much for 7 years. Unfortunately, at that time, Xuanai was only a child who had just turned 10 years old. If he told a child that he was a magic shooter from Fairy Tail, the child would probably have a confused look on his face, right? After all, could you expect a child who was just over 10 years old to understand how great Fairy Tail was and what kind of existence it was? Because of this, in order to let the young Xuanai understand what kind of guild she was in, Noah said that he was the sorcerer of the strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom. In the end, because of this sentence, Xuanai, who desperately wanted to get close to Noah, went further and further away. She then joined the Saber-Tooth, that rose after the Fairy Tail fell from grace. If this could not be said to be fate playing tricks on people, then what could be called fate playing tricks on people? Although he did not know how Xuanai had been all these years, but looking at her unusual persistence on the first day they met, and now sitting on the ground crying weakly, Noah could imagine how painful Xuanai's heart was. Thus, Noah could only remain silent. Because Noah and Xuanai's conversation was not very loud, there were so many spectators present, and naturally no one could hear the conversation between the two. However, everyone clearly saw Xuanai's sad and crying appearance. Thus, everyone understood and shut their mouths, giving Noah and Xuanai some time. It was not that everyone here was so considerate, but after the competition, the contestants would have a short exchange after the competition, which was not a strange thing. Some people would appreciate each other after the battle. Some people would hate each other after the battle. Some people would talk to each other after the battle. Some people would ask each other to come again after the battle. That was the fun of the competition. Thus, everyone present tacitly gave Noah and Xuanai some time. Even Chapati, who was on the rostrum, did not speak anymore. However, this period of time could not be too long. No one knew if Noah had realized this, but he suddenly spoke. "Let's play Fairy Tail." Xuanai raised her head. Her cheeks were wet and her eyes were red and swollen. She stared blankly at Noah. Clearly, Xuanai never thought that Noah would say this. In front of Xuanai, Noah cast his gaze on her and said, "Actually, things aren't as complicated as you think, and there's no need for you to be so clumsy. If you really want to stand in front of me and tell me that you're a powerful magic shooter, then you've already done it. I've said it before, you're very strong. Even in Fairy Tail you can be ranked in the top 10. With this level of strength, I believe that no one would deny that you're a powerful magic shooter." Noah's voice clearly entered Xuanai's ears. "And if you want to join the strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom, then just join Fairy Tail. After this year's Great Demon Battle Arts competition, we'll definitely become the strongest. That way, everything will go back to square one. Even if we can't eliminate the pain you've suffered in the past 7 years, at least we can redeem the regret that you wish to redeem. To tell you the truth, after the Great Demon Battle Arts competition, I'll be inheriting the position of the guild leader of Fairy Tail." Noah smiled slightly. "At that time, if you can join my guild, I think I'll be very happy." After leaving these words, Noah directly turned around, and under Xuanai's gaze, he slowly left in the direction of Fairy Tail's contestant area. Looking at Noah's gradually disappearing figure, Xuanai was stunned. Because that back was exactly the same as the last scene that Xuanai saw when she was saved by Noah in the alley 7 years ago. However, that was to be expected. For Xuanai, Noah saved her when she was a child and changed her fate. That was something that happened 7 years ago. But for Noah, that was only about half a year ago. In half a year's time, Noah naturally wouldn't have changed that much. His back was naturally exactly the same as 7 years ago when Xuanai knew him. This made Xuanai feel as if she had returned to square one. Noah was telling Xuanai this. It wasn't too late to start afresh. As long as Xuanai joined Fairy Tail, she would be able to do it. Do you want to join Fairy Tail? Looking at Noah's gradually disappearing figure, Xuanai fell into silence. And when Noah returned to the contestant area, he was greeted with Myra's gentle smile. You've worked hard. Noah shook his head, reached out and hugged his fiancée. His heart was calm. In the duel portion of the Great Demon Battle Arts competition, besides the battle between Noah and Xuanai, there were 3 more matches. In the first match, a guy named Black Snake from Raventail fought against a sorcerer named Lamia Scale. Black Snake was victorious. In the second match, Kagura from Mermaid Heel fought against Ginny from Blue Pegasus. Kagura won. As for the third match, it was naturally the battle between Fairy Tail Team A and Cotter Cerberus. And the contestant for Fairy Tail Team A was Alusha. His opponent was an S-rank sorcerer from the Cotter Cerberus. This match was quite interesting. Both sides were active S-rank wizards in the guild, their strength was almost on par, and it was hard to tell who would win. In the end, Alusha won by a narrow margin and won the match. After this day of competition and duels, the 8 teams obtained different scores and the rankings changed a lot. First place, Fairy Tail A Team 26p. Second place, Fairy Tail B Team 24p. Third place, Raventail 24p. Fourth place, Sabertooth 20p. Fifth place, Mermaid Heel 17p. Sixth place, Blue Pegasus 15p. Seventh place, Lamia Scale 12p. Eighth place, Cotter Cerberus 10p. Finally, Fairy Tail jumped to the top of the list, and the 2 teams occupied the first and second place respectively, causing many of the magic shooters in Fairy Tail to shed manly tears on the spot. On the other hand, Sabertooth was pushed out of first place and was even pushed down to fourth place. Not only was it overtaken by Fairy Tail, but it was also overtaken by Raventail. In response, the group of sorcerers from Sabertooth remained silent as they left the venue. Noah just happened to notice this scene. Looking at Suno, who was following behind Sting, Logue, Lucifer, and Ayaga with her head lowered, her expression completely indiscernible, Noah thought of the personality of Sabertooth's leader, Germain, and narrowed his eyes slightly. Chapter 1687. Following the perfect ending of the second day of the Great Demon Showdown, night gradually fell. However, at this moment in one of the corridors of Croca's palace, the captain of the Sakura Knights, Alcardios, was walking forward with powerful footsteps. Taking a closer look, not only was Alcardios' expression rather solemn, but there was also a faint trace of shock in his eyes. Recalling the terrifying scene he saw in the venue during the day, Alcardios' expression became more and more dignified, causing his footsteps to quicken. After walking for an unknown period of time, Alcardios arrived in front of a room. Standing at the door, Alcardios took a deep breath, stretched out his hand and pushed the door open. What appeared before Alcardios was a vast and luxurious room. Moreover, from the layout, it was easy to see that this room belonged to a woman. Under such circumstances, Alcardios walked in without any hesitation. As soon as Alcardios walked into the room, a rather pleasant voice sounded. "You're here, Sir Alcardios." Hearing this, Alcardios stopped and raised his head to look ahead. In the deepest part of the room, in front of a window, there was a young girl with her back facing Alcardios. Bathed in the moonlight, the scene was extremely beautiful. It was a beautiful young girl wearing a gorgeous dress with emerald green waist-length hair. The young girl slowly turned her head, revealing her delicate and pretty face to Alcardios. She looked straight at him. "I knew that you would definitely come." "Yes." Alcardios lowered his head and bowed to the young lady, who was much younger than him and looked much weaker than he was, as if he was a subject. "I have something very important to report, Princess." The young girl was the princess of the Fiori Kingdom, Emerald. Emerald seemed to have already known what Alcardios wanted to say and closed her eyes. Sir, you want to talk about the person who had an amazing performance in today's Great Demon Showdown, right? Princess already knows. Alcardios was startled at first, then nodded and said in an extremely serious tone. Since the princess already knows, then I might as well say it directly. That man is very dangerous. I know, not only I know, I believe that those who saw the power of that man today will clearly know how dangerous he is. Emerald's expression became serious. Fortunately, we did not become enemies with that lord. I don't think so, princess. Alcardios immediately retorted. Don't forget, our solar eclipse plan needs the power of archmages, and the 2 archmages that appeared in this great demon battle exhibition are more or less related to that man. If we plan to make a move on those 2 archmages, I believe that man won't let it go. I understand your concern, Sir Alcardios, but you are mistaken. Emerald shook her head. We do need the power of the archmage to carry out the solar eclipse plan, but we don't need to touch that lord's companions, do we? You don't need to touch that man's companions? Alcardios was stunned as he frowned. Princess's meaning is. In short, I have my own plans, Sir Alcardios doesn't need to worry. Emerald pursed her lips as she evaded the question. Right now, the Great Demon Battle Exhibition is only on the 2nd day, and there are still 3 days before it ends. Our plan will only be carried out after the Great Demon Battle Exhibition ends. Right now, we only need to observe for the time being. Hearing this, Alcardios' frown deepened, but he didn't say anything else and only asked a question. Then what should I do next? Sir Alcardios only needs to be responsible for maintaining the order during the Great Demon Battle Exhibition. That's enough, Emerald said. As for the other matters, we can wait until the time is right. Right now, we must not act recklessly, especially towards that man with astonishing power. We must be careful and not offend him. Yes. Alcardios lowered his head. Then I will take my leave first. Fei Chui nodded and asked Alcardios to leave the room. The dusky room suddenly returned to its silent state. Emerald had been staring at the door of her room, and after a while she suddenly spoke. Did you hear what I said just now? Emerald's sudden words clearly echoed throughout the entire room. Not long after, the shadow of the girl bathed in the moonlight suddenly distorted. The distorted shadow slowly grew taller, gradually converging into a human figure that appeared in the room. The person who came out from the shadow was a man. He was wearing a rather gorgeous costume, with half black and half gray hair tied into a ponytail, and a black tattoo around his left eye. His whole body was surrounded by an ominous aura. Emerald looked at the man who came out from her shadow, and her eyes became sharp. You didn't mention to me that in the guild called Fairy Tale, there is actually such a powerful sorcerer. Hearing Emerald's words, the man slowly raised his head, revealing a pair of charming eyes under the moonlight. Then the man's mouth curved and said, "Whether there is such a person or not, is it important?" Emerald didn't answer, but her eyes became sharper and sharper. Facing Emerald's sharp eyes, the man acted as if he didn't feel anything, and said very disapprovingly, "That man is indeed very powerful. I'm afraid he is the most powerful person I have ever seen, but in the end, he is only in the realm of human. Do you think that person alone can replace the solar eclipse plan and save this country?" Emerald was speechless. In response, the man's smile became more and more intense. "Princess, please don't forget we need to save this country and even save the world. To do this, the solar eclipse plan is the only way. We have been planning this for 7 years, and now, because of a person who suddenly appeared, you want to cancel the plan?" Emerald lowered her head and softly said, "I don't want to cancel the solar eclipse plan. In that case, it doesn't matter whether that person exists or not." The man shrugged. "The reason why I didn't say it is because I don't think it is necessary to mention it. Princess only needs to implement the solar eclipse plan. Whether or not we will implement the solar eclipse plan will depend on the final result of the Great Demonic Martial Arts Competition." Emerald raised her eyes and looked at the evil man. "If the result of the Great Demonic Martial Arts Competition is as you predicted, then I will start the solar eclipse plan. If not, then I am sorry, I will not use this plan." "That is enough." The man suddenly smiled. "Because in the end the result will be as I said." Leaving these words, the man's figure suddenly turned into a shadow, merged with Emerald's shadow and disappeared. Looking at the man who disappeared into her shadow, Emerald was silent. In the courtyard under the moonlight, a shadow suddenly appeared without any warning and turned into the evil man's appearance. However, the smile on the man's face disappeared little by little, and his expression became a bit ugly. I have never told you that there is such a person in fairy tale? The man gritted his teeth and said, Isn't that natural? From what I know of fairy tale, there is no such person. Who is that person? Why does he have such powerful strength? The man's face was full of uncertainty. No, that guy is definitely a variable. I have to find a way to deal with him. And don't let him ruin the final result of the great demonic martial arts competition. After saying that, the man turned into a shadow again and disappeared. Chapter 1688. At the same time in the Saber-Tooth Inn, an atmosphere even heavier than the one in the palace was pervading in a spacious room that resembled a hall. Germain sat on the seat in the deepest part of the room with his eyes closed and his arms crossed. There was no expression on his face. However, Germain's body was emitting waves of mana that were visible to the naked eye. They rose from his body like mist and shook the surrounding air, causing the atmosphere to become somewhat chaotic. Looking at Germain in such a state, the archmages of Saber-Tooth, who were lined up neatly like an army, did not even dare to breathe loudly. Their faces were already covered in cold sweat. As for Justin, Logue, Lucifer, Alyaga, and Shuanai who were lined up at the front, they lowered their heads and remained silent. No one knew how long this scene lasted. Until a certain moment, Germain's voice sounded like a tiger's roar. Fourth place. That low voice made everyone's heartbeat quicken slightly. Fourth place. Germain repeated and opened his eyes. He stared at Justin and the others who were lined up at the front. His voice was low and terrifying. You actually reduced my Saber-Tooth to fourth place. Tell me, how should I punish you? Trash? Justin, Logue, Lucifer, and Alyaga all closed their eyes and were speechless. Obviously, the four of them chose not to face Germain's anger head-on. Shuanai also did not say anything. However, Shuanai was not afraid of Germain's anger. Instead, she kept thinking about what Noah had said to her, and thousands of thoughts flashed through her mind. Germain, who did not know what Shuanai was thinking, slowly leaned back on his seat and said expressionlessly, Although I've said it many times, I still have to tell you that my guild doesn't need trash who only know how to fail. Only those who continuously win are qualified to join my guild and become my army. So you should know what I'll do, right? No one answered. Because everyone was very clear that at this time, Germain would do something cruel. Justin, Germain suddenly said, is there anything you want to say? I don't have anything to say, Sting said after a moment of silence. I have indeed fallen to last place in today's competition. I have tarnished the reputation of Saber-Tooth as the strongest. No matter what kind of punishment you give me, I will accept it. Steen. Rector couldn't help but call out softly, as if he couldn't bear to see what kind of punishment Steen would suffer. He turned his head away with a worried expression. Germain, on the other hand, shifted his gaze to Sting and snorted coldly. You're very smart. You didn't make any unnecessary explanations. If you dared to come up with any excuses, I would definitely punish you without hesitation. Seeing that you didn't lose in a head-on confrontation, I'll give you another chance. However, this is the only chance. Do you understand? Yes. Siting lowered his head and answered. At this moment, Jie-man looked at the silent Xuanai, and his tone became icy cold. Xuanai, do you have anything to say? Hearing this before Xuanai could react, the others had already silently sighed in their hearts. Germain had just said that because Sting didn't lose in a head-on confrontation, he would give him a chance. However, Xuanai had lost in an individual battle and directly lost the points of the duel. In this way, Xuanai's fate was already obvious. For Germain, who had supreme strength, Xuanai's failure was enough reason to expel him from the guild. No matter what Xuanai said, he shouldn't be able to avoid being expelled from the guild, right? Even if Xuanai's opponent was Noah Dole, who defeated Jura with less than 1% of his strength and had the terrifying strength to cut through stars, it would still be the same. In this regard, Xuanai was silent for a moment before he spoke. I do have something to say. Everyone was shocked. This Xuanai, was he planning to go against the president's words again? One must know that just now, Germain had also said that if he dared to come up with any excuses, he would not hesitate to punish him. Undoubtedly, Xuanai knew this. What else did Xuanai want to say? Could it be that because she knew that she couldn't stay in the guild, Xuanai began to give up on herself? This was the thought in everyone's mind. On the other hand, Germain was still expressionless. Then let me see what else you want to say. Xuanai closed her eyes slightly. At this moment in Xuanai's mind, only Noah's back appeared. Looking at his back, Xuanai really wanted to reach out to him, because she wanted to keep him, because she wanted to be close to him. No matter what, Xuanai wanted to be with him. This thought was unprecedentedly strong. This was because Xuanai still remembered that in the arena, Noah had said this to her. If you wish to join the strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom, then just join Fairy Tail. After this year's Great Demon Battle Exhibition, we will definitely become the strongest. Then everything will go back to square one. Even if we can't eliminate the pain you've suffered in the past 7 years, at least we can salvage the regret you wish to salvage. That's right. All he had to do was add in Fairy Tail and everything would go back to square one. Xuanai only wanted to join the same guild as Noah and tell Noah that she had become a powerful magic shooter. Now, as long as Xuanai joined Fairy Tail, then her wish that was 7 years late would come true. Thinking of this, Xuanai suddenly opened her eyes and looked at Germain. I want to leave Sabretooth and join Fairy Tail. When this sentence reverberated throughout the vast hall, everyone present was dumbfounded, including Sting, Logue, Lucifer, and Olyaga. Germain's eyes suddenly widened as she spoke in a low voice in disbelief. What did you say? I want to leave Sabretooth. Xuanai met Germain's gaze without any fear and said resolutely, because I want to join Fairy Tail. Everyone suddenly fell silent. An extremely heavy and terrifying tension suddenly spread in the air. Everyone looked at Xuanai in disbelief. No one would have thought that Xuanai would say such a thing under such circumstances. Rector couldn't help but take a step back as he muttered, "She's dead." Almost as soon as he finished speaking, an astonishing oppressive aura burst out from Germain's body and swept across the surroundings. Good. Very good. Germain said in a low voice, finally with anger in her voice. Xuanai, can I take it that you're telling me that my guild can't compare to that trash guild? Germain originally planned to ruthlessly expel Xuanai. Not only that, but Germain also planned to humiliate Xuanai, who had tarnished the name of the strongest guild, before kicking her out. In the end, Germain did not expect that Xuanai would take the initiative to ask to leave. This made Germain feel that her guild had been humiliated by Xuanai, and the anger in her heart rose sharply. However, in the face of Germain's anger, Xuanai fearlessly looked at her and said such a sentence. Yes, this Sabretooth definitely can't compare to the guild that the Lord is in. At least that's the case for me. That's right. To Xuanai, as long as it was a guild with Noah, then no matter what kind of guild it was, it could not compare to her. Because Xuanai only wanted to join a guild with Noah. Unfortunately, these words from the bottom of her heart completely ignited the ruthlessness in Germain's heart. Chapter 1689. Wang. Instantly, under the horrified gazes of all the magic shooters in Sabretooth, Germain, who was sitting on his seat, burst out with powerful magical energy and slowly stood up. Undoubtedly, his movements were rather slow, but it gave off a terrifying feeling of a tiger waking up from its nap and baring its fangs at its prey. Under such a terrifying feeling, all the magic shooters in the room took a step back, sweat dripping down their faces. Only Xuanai, who seemed to have expected this, did not move and face Germain directly, not even taking a step back. Since she had already decided, no matter what the outcome was, Xuanai would not regret it. 7 years ago, she wasn't able to join Noah's guild. As a result, she struggled for several years in the Sabretooth. Yukino didn't want to experience the pain anymore. Hence, this time, Xuanai wanted to fight for her wish. Hence, no matter what, Xuanai would not back down. Hence, while everyone was retreating, Xuanai was the only one who did not. The front of the hall was immediately emptied out, leaving Xuanai alone, facing Germain, who was surging with terrifying magical energy. Germain surged with magical energy, shaking the air as she lifted her feet and walked towards Xuanai step by step. You're just a defeated piece of trash. I haven't even banished you and you actually dare to quit. You even said that my guild is inferior to a trashy guild that has been at the bottom for thousands of years. Germain walked towards Xuanai step by step, looking at her with eyes full of ruthlessness and even a trace of murderous intent. Who gave you the guts to do that? Huh? As Germain approached, the pressure immediately affected Xuanai's body bit by bit. In response, Xuanai only stared at Germain, took a deep breath, and a resolute expression appeared in her eyes. No matter what, I've already decided to quit Sabertooth. You're no longer my guild leader. If you plan to make a move on me, then I'll definitely retaliate. As she said this, Xuanai stretched out her hands, holding two resplendent golden keys in her hands, and her body also surged with magical energy. Seeing that Xuanai was actually planning to retaliate against Germain, the magic shooters of Sabertooth all looked at Xuanai with pity. That high mage star spirit was absolutely insane. Regardless of whether Xuanai could defeat Germain, even if she could, Xuanai would not be able to leave this hotel. This was because Germain was not the only one in the inn. All the sorcerers from Sabertooth were there as well. Even if Xuanai was very strong and had once fought for the right to appear in the Great Demon Battle exhibition, she had defeated everyone except for Sting, Logue, Lucius, Alyga, and Maniba. But with Sting, Logue, Lucius, and Alyga present, Xuanai had absolutely no chance of winning. This girl was undoubtedly looking for death. Even Germain was so angry that he laughed. Counterattack? A mere piece of trash actually wants to counterattack against me? Then let me see to what extent you can counterattack. Germain's body suddenly tensed up. Xuanai, who sensed that it was the precursor to an attack, also tightened her grip on the magic star key. Just as Xuanai was about to fight against the entire Sabertooth, an accident happened. Dong! Along with the sound of an explosion, the door of the hall suddenly burst open. A burst of flames and impact blew the entire heavy door away. What? What happened? The group of Sabertooth's magic shooters turned pale with fright. They hurriedly separated and gathered on both sides, away from the direction of the door. What's wrong? Sting, Logue, Lucifer, and Alyga all looked at the door in surprise. Germain raised her head and looked over with a fierce expression. Xuanai, who was ready to fight a bloody battle, subconsciously turned her head and looked in the direction of the door that had exploded. In the next moment, the sound of footsteps slowly sounded from the explosion. Whoosh! It was as if a gust of wind suddenly blew through the entire inn, mixed with some magic power, and blew away the explosion and smoke that pervaded the air at the door. A foot suddenly stepped on a piece of debris left behind by the explosion of the door. Under the watchful eyes of all the magic shooters from Sabertooth, the figure gradually walked in. When the appearance of the intruder was revealed in front of everyone's eyes, everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air. You! Justin, Logue, Lucius, and Alyga all took a step back with a shocked expression. Among the people present, only Xuanai looked at the person who walked in from the door, and couldn't help but cover her mouth. Her eyes, which had not wavered until now, were now filled with waves of emotions. Then Xuanai called out in excitement and disbelief. Lord Noah! The person who had come was Noah. Stepping on the debris of the door, Noah walked into the gathering place of Sabertooth. His gaze was directed directly at Germain, and a cold light flashed in his deep, dark eyes. Early in the day, Noah had guessed that with Germain's arrogant, conceited, and ruthless character, it was impossible for him to let go of Xuanai's defeat. He would definitely make things difficult for Xuanai, and even expel her from the guild. For this reason, Noah directly followed him and hid in the dark, observing the development here. In the end, Noah still underestimated Germain. I originally thought that being expelled from the guild after one defeat was ridiculous enough. I didn't expect that there would be a guild leader who wouldn't allow a member to leave the guild, and would even attack a member who wishes to leave the guild. Noah directly ignored the surrounding magic shooters who had a shocked expression and walked straight in the direction of Germain. His gaze was like an arrow shooting at Germain, carrying no emotion in it. As expected, shouldn't we place too much hope on small fries? His emotionless words finally woke everyone up from their stupor. Damn it! Cold sweat broke out on Sting's forehead. How did he come here? Rogue, Lucius, and Alyga also clenched their fists, but their palms were wet, and their hearts were trembling. For Sting and the others who had witnessed the power Noah displayed during the day, Noah was simply the most terrifying existence in the world. Therefore, including the other members, everyone's hearts trembled at this moment, and they continuously retreated, wishing that they could get as far away from Noah as possible. On the contrary, Germain, who did not go to the Great Demon battle drill to watch the battle today, looked at Noah, who was slowly walking towards him, and narrowed his eyes slightly. "Who are you?" Hearing this, Noah smiled indifferently, but there was no smile in his eyes. "An insignificant member of the so-called trashy guild that you speak of." After saying this, Noah gently raised one of his hands. Clank! Accompanied by a wave of mana. Like electric wires, magic patterns extended from Noah's raised arm. During this process, Noah did not stop walking, and continued walking towards Germain. "I see you're that Noah Dole?" Germain ignored Noah's approach and coldly said, "You actually dare to intrude into the headquarters of my army? How bold! No wonder this piece of trash who worships you dares to resist me. Very well, let me trample you under my feet, and clearly tell this defeated piece of trash what the consequences of disobeying me are." Germain walked past Xuanai, who had yet to react, and walked towards Noah. "Don't you have a godly blade that can even cut stars? Show it to me." Germain could no longer say the rest of his words. Bang! In the midst of an explosion, Noah's figure suddenly turned into a bullet, and violently shot in front of Germain. Chapter 1690. Bang! In that instant, before anyone could react, the ground was stomped into pieces. Noah, who had turned into a bullet, streaked across the air and arrived in front of Germain. A pair of cold eyes were imprinted in Germain's eyes, causing Germain's expression to change drastically. Whoosh! His fist, which was covered with magic veins that looked like electric wires, suddenly blasted out. With a shocking whistling sound, the air trembled as it heavily bombarded Germain's chest. Bang! In the muffled explosion, the terrifying blow that was enough to split mountains directly blasted Germain into the ground. Dong! The shocking force suddenly acted on the ground, causing the ground of the entire hotel to sink abruptly. It was as if the ground had collapsed layer by layer. Suddenly, the entire ground seemed to have been hit by a meteorite, causing a huge crater to appear. The shocking impact and smoke caused cracks to spread out along the ground like a spider web. Ah! The group of saber-tooth magic shooters let out sorrowful cries as they swayed from side to side amidst the violent shaking. They fell down in disarray, looking extremely miserable. Many of them were even directly blown away by the shocking impact. One by one they hit the wall and spat out all the air in their lungs. Their heads tilted to one side, and they fainted. Even Sting, Rog, Lucius, and Olga were caught off guard by the sudden impact and vibration. They tried their best to stabilize their bodies, and their faces were full of horror. As for Xuanai, she seemed to be protected by something in the dark, and was not affected by the aftermath. She was only startled by the thick smoke and dust that blew away. She hurriedly raised her hands to block in front of her body, blocking the sand and gravel that were flying towards her face. When the impact and the thick smoke and dust finally subsided, the group of saber-tooth magic shooters in the spacious hall of the hotel had already fallen to the ground. They were lying on the ground one by one, softly moaning in pain. These people were not violently blown away, smashed onto the ground, or hit by the gravel that shot out like bullets, causing them to suffer varying degrees of injuries. In the end, there were only 5 people who were able to remain unscathed. They were Sting, Rog, Lucius, Olga, and Xuanai. The 5 of them slowly raised their heads from the arms in front of them, and looked forward with lingering fear. The only scene in front of them was a deep collapsed crater. And in the crater, Germain, who had been punched into the ground by Noah. Germain, who was deeply embedded in the ground, violently spat out a mouthful of blood, drenching his face and chest. In front of Germain, Noah turned around and swung his smoking fist forcefully. The magic patterns that spread over it like electric wires immediately dissipated. Then, Noah's sarcastic voice rang out. "I don't need to use my heavenly sword of salvation to deal with scum like you. Who doesn't know what's good for him? Who doesn't know what's good for him? Who thinks he's so great? One punch is enough." This sentence caused Germain's eyes to widen, and the rage and grievance in his heart surged up in an instant. In the end, in the unimaginable humiliation and rage, Jermaine violently spat out another mouthful of blood. His head tilted to the side and he also fainted. The entire hall suddenly fell silent. You! Sting, Rog, Lucius, and Olga looked at Noah with eyes full of fear. Noah glanced at Sting and the others and said indifferently, "Don't worry, I won't touch you. Don't worry, I won't do anything to you. You are all contestants participating in the Great Demon Combat Drill. If I hurt you in private, it might be considered as a violation of the rules and directly disqualification. So you can rest assured." Hearing this, how could Sting and the others still not understand? In the entire saber-tooth, only the 4 of them did not suffer any injuries. It was not their luck, but Noah's intention. At this moment, the 4 of them looked at Noah with even more fear in their eyes. Ignoring the fearful gazes of Sting, Rog, Lucius, and Olga, as well as the archmages of Saber-Tooth, lying on the ground and wailing incessantly, Noah turned around and looked at Xuan'ai. At this moment, Xuan'ai seemed to have not reacted to the sudden development of the situation, and her face was blank. Seeing Xuan'ai like this, Noah could not help but smile, and extended a hand towards Xuan'ai's direction. Seeing Noah extend his hand towards her, Xuan'ai could not help but be startled. To this, Noah only looked straight into Xuan'ai's eyes and said this. "What? Don't you plan to go back with me? Go back." Xuan'ai repeated as if she had lost her mind. "Yes." Noah smiled and said so. "Go back to our fairy tale." Xuan'ai's eyes immediately lit up. Then, as if she was a little timid, she slowly extended her hand and put her hand in Noah's. Noah tightened his grip on Xuan'ai's hand, and with a faint smile on his face, he held the hand of this young girl who had yearned for him for 7 years, turned around and walked towards the door, leaving the scene. Only Sting, Logue, Lucifer, and Olga were left. They looked at the sorcerers of the saber-tooth lying on the ground, wailing incessantly. Then they looked at Jermaine, who was embedded in the ground, covered in blood and passed out. They fell into silence. It was only at this moment that the 4 of them realized how childish their thoughts were in the past. The strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom? The trashy guild that had been at the bottom for 10,000 years? These 2 concepts, because of the existence of one person, were completely overturned. The former was completely defeated with a casual punch from him. As long as the latter was with him, no matter how trashy, who could look down on them? Just like what Xuan'ai said. No matter how strong Saber-Tooth was, as long as Noah was in the guild, they would not be able to compare. Fairy tale. Just what kind of guild could attract such a frightening existence to protect it? How could that person be so strong? Could they really win against that person and keep their title as the strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom? If they couldn't, wouldn't they be chased out one by Jermaine? At this moment, an unprecedented sense of loss attacked Sting, Rog, Lucius, and Olga. At this moment, a somewhat flirtatious voice sounded. "It seems that someone has caused a huge ruckus." Sting and the others were shocked and quickly turned their heads to look at the source of the voice. They saw that beside Jermaine, who was covered in blood, a woman wearing a cheongsam was looking around, her eyes full of sarcasm. The strongest guild was actually taken down by one person. Fortunately, no one found out yet. Otherwise, the entire Fiori Kingdom would laugh at us tomorrow, right? Looking at the woman who suddenly appeared without any warning, Sting and the others exclaimed in surprise. "Miss." Surprisingly, it was Maniba. Ignoring Sting and the others, Maniba lowered her head and looked at Jermaine, who was covered in blood and fainted. A touch of disdain and sarcasm appeared on her face. "This is the result of the Reign of Terror. What a joke, father." Sting and the others glanced at each other, then moved towards Maniba in unison. "Young miss," Lucifer inquired, "now what should we do?" "It's just that someone is looking for trouble. As the contestants, you just need to continue the competition." Maniba sneered. "But I didn't expect Xuan'ai to betray us. Let me take her place." The others could only nod. Chapter 1691. Ahem. In Fairy Tales in front of all the members, Noah coughed and said, "Well, that's how it is. From today onwards, Xuan'ai will officially be a member of our guild." Hearing this, the group of Fairy Tales magic shooters first looked at each other in dismay, then turned their heads and looked at Noah's side. There, Xuan'ai no longer had the straightforwardness and strength that she showed before. Her delicate face carried traces of nervousness. Under everyone's gaze, she bent down and bowed deeply. I am the newcomer Xuanai Argulia. Please give me some pointers. At this time, Xuanai's heart was filled with nervousness and apprehension. Because, after bringing Xuanai here, Noah did not give any explanation at all. He just directly told the members of Fairy Tale that from today onwards, Xuanai would be a member of the guild, and that was it. In other words, almost everyone present did not know why Noah suddenly brought Xuanai back, and brought the magic shooter of Sabretooth who had beaten Fairy Tale so badly yesterday into the guild. So how could Xuanai not be nervous? After all, Xuanai had publicly tried to poach Noah from the guild in front of everyone in Fairy Tale several times. She had also repeatedly said that Fairy Tale was not as good as Sabretooth. Even today and yesterday, she still represented Sabretooth in the competition. Bringing such a person into the guild without any explanation, and even allowing him to join the guild, who wouldn't be the first to criticize him. At least that was what Xuanai thought. Unfortunately, in the next moment, Xuanai was completely dumbfounded. She saw a group of Fairy Tale's magic shooters suddenly gathered around Xuanai, surrounding this young girl, and began to make a ruckus. Oh, there's actually a new member. And such a cute girl. How many years has it been since a new member joined our guild? This is great. Hey, can I call you Kuno-chan? If you don't say anything, I'll take it as a yes. The noise and enthusiasm from the surroundings made Xuanai, who was full of uneasiness, panic. She paced back and forth, not knowing what to do. At this moment, Lise Anna suddenly squeezed through the crowd and forcefully separated the crowd around Snow Nai. She scolded in a rather angry tone. I'm talking about you. Don't scare her. Mira also stepped forward and arrived in front of Snow, revealing a gentle and sweet smile. Welcome to Fairy Tale. I'm Mira. Can I just call you Xuanai? Snowy nodded subconsciously. Clearly, she hadn't recovered from the enthusiasm of the guild members. What's wrong? Are you scared? Mira looked at Snow worriedly. I'm really sorry. Everyone was just too happy. It's been a long time since a new member joined our guild. Please don't mind. Yeah, Lise Anna said with a sigh. Although it has only been a few months for us, for our companions in the guild, it has been 7 years since the last time we joined. For the past 7 years, only members have left the guild. There has never been a new member. That's why everyone is so happy. I don't mind. Please don't worry. Snow shook her head and said softly after hesitating for a moment. But is it really okay for me to join just like that? What's wrong? Asked Alusa, who had appeared out of nowhere. Could it be that there's something wrong? No, there's nothing like that, Snow stammered. It's just that before this, I've said some very rude things to everyone. What? So you're referring to that kind of thing? Naz said casually. We've long forgotten about that kind of thing. Love. Happy flew in the air and raised his hand. Because Naz is an idiot. Well said, I agree with that. Gray folded his arms and nodded while glancing at Snow. But you're really strong. I couldn't fight back against you in yesterday's battle. If there's a chance, I'll definitely find you for revenge. The meaning of revenge is not to make things difficult for Miss Xu and I, but to compete with you. Wendy hurriedly explained. So, please don't worry about being ostracized. We're all very good people. We'll definitely get along well with Miss Snow. If it's a competition, then fight it out with me when the time comes. Naz immediately shouted loudly. Then he seemed to remember something and glared at Gray. Hey, that naked pervert over there. You just scolded me, didn't you? Huh. Gray glared back, unwilling to be outdone. When did I scold you? You still want to lie to me? Undoubtedly, you just scolded me. You called me a pervert. Naz. Is there something wrong with your head? Undoubtedly, the person who scolded you is Hubby, and you're the one who scolded me as a pervert. Gray. How could Hubby scold me? He's a cat. Naz. What's so strange about a talking cat scolding people? And it's not the first time you've been scolded. Idiot. Gray. What did you say? Droop your eyes. Naz. I said you're an idiot. Hang your eyes. Gray. Do you want to fight? Pervert. Naz. Just what I want. Bring it on. Idiot. Gray. So without any hesitation, Naz and Gray rolled into a ball and fought with each other. The surrounding tables were smashed into pieces and the debris flew everywhere. All of a sudden, the surrounding people were swept into it, and they started to panic. Whoa, what are you doing? Go outside to fight. You two idiots. Everything was smashed by you. My wine. My meat. Naz. Gray. Compensate me. Everyone was angry. One by one they all joined in and wrestled with Naz and Gray. Suddenly the entire bar of the hotel was in chaos. Tables, plates of food, and glasses of wine were all smashed and spilled all over the floor. At that moment Elisha stood up and shouted righteously, "Stop what you're doing." As soon as she said that, a plate of dishes flew directly over. Padash! With a crisp sound, the plate smashed directly on Elisha's face, causing the sauce to splash on Elisha's face. The entire hotel suddenly became quiet. Everyone looked in Elisha's direction with a look of horror. Then Elisha reached out and pulled the plate off her face. She opened her eyes with the sauce all over her face. Her delicate face was completely filled with rage. "You idiots!" With a roar, Elisha held two night swords and charged over. Everyone cried out in alarm. Not long after, the cries of alarm turned into screams, causing the whole scene to become a mess. Era. Mira held one side of her face, her smile still gentle. "It's like this again." Really, even Elisha joined in. Lisanna complained. "What about the compensation?" "Ahahaha." Lucy laughed dryly. "I can already imagine what kind of expression the president will have when he comes back." "Wah." Wendy was at a loss. What should we do?" "Humph." Xiaolulu turned her head away. "What a bunch of idiots." Looking at Naz, Gray, and Elisha's group who were in a mess, then looking at Mira and the others who were used to it, Xuanai raised a hand and clenched it in front of her, muttering in disbelief. "Is this the fairy tale?" Xuanai didn't notice. At this moment, a smile unconsciously appeared on her face. Noah, who had been observing Xuanai from the side, saw this scene and smiled without leaving a trace. Chapter 1692. In a room of the fairy tale hotel, Xuanai's clothes were completely removed, and her delicate body was completely exposed to the air. "Oh!" Looking at Xuanai's naked body, Mira, Lisanna, and Lucy all exclaimed in surprise, because Xuanai's figure was quite good. Her skin was as white as a pearl, and looked very soft and elastic. The curves of her body were bent in an extremely perfect and seductive way, which could be said to be the golden ratio. In addition to her full upper circumference, perky buttocks, and smooth and slender thighs, even to Mira, Lisanna, and Lucy, who were also women, she was quite attractive. The girl in front of them was definitely a femme fatale. If a man saw this body, there was a 99% chance that he would lose his rationality, right? Under the gaze of Mira, Lisanna, and Lucy, Xuanai's face was slightly red as she hugged her chest and said shyly, Please don't look at me like that." Sorry. Lucy put her palms together and said embarrassedly, "It's just that Xuanai's figure is too good. Even we were stunned when we saw it." "That's right." Lisanna puffed up her cheeks in a fit of pique. "Her figure looks even better than mine." "How enviable." "There's no such thing." Xuanai hurriedly denied. "I think that Lady Lisanna's figure is also very good." "Is that really so?" Lisanna touched her lower abdomen. "But I still want to be slimmer. Otherwise, after the Great Demon Battle exhibition, I won't look good in the wedding dress." "Wedding dress?" Xuanai was slightly startled. Then she thought of something important and came to a realization. "I remember that Lady Mira and Lady Lisanna are already engaged to Lord Noah, right?" "That's right," Lucy said with a smile. "Moreover, after the Great Demon Battle exhibition, the three of them are planning to get married." Xuanai looked at Mira and Lisanna in surprise. Really? Is it really too sudden?" Mira smiled embarrassedly. "However, for Xuanai, our engagement with Noah was already 7 years ago. It's already too late to get married now." "That's right," she said with a hint of longing in her eyes. "I've always wanted to be Big Brother Noah's bride. And now I can finally fulfill my wish." Seeing the traces of happiness on the faces of Mira and Lisanna, Xuanai knew how much they liked Noah. Xuanai's heart was filled with envy. He was envious of two things. First, Mira and Lisanna had found their own happiness, and the other party was Noah. Secondly, Mila and Lisana's feelings for Noah were very deep. After all, Noah was similarly the target of Xuanai's yearning. The so-called longing was very easy to appear together with love. So, logically speaking, it wouldn't be strange for Xuanai to feel jealous and resentful toward Mira and Lisana. However, at this moment, Xuanai's heart didn't have any jealousy or resentment, only envy. She envied Mira and Lisana for being able to accompany Noah for the rest of their lives. She envied the sisters for being able to openly express their love for Noah. Xuanai looked strong, but in reality, she was a weak and self-abased girl. Thus, in Xuanai's opinion, someone of low birth like her didn't have the right to be with Noah. To be able to stay in the same guild as Noah and see him every day, Xuanai was already very satisfied. What's more, Fairy Tale was an incredible guild. This was the first time in 7 years that Xuanai felt a sense of belonging and happiness. Although the time was very short, compared to a cruel and cold guild like Sabertooth, Xuanai unsurprisingly fell in love with Fairy Tale, a guild full of joy. Due to her low birth and low self-esteem, Xuanai was actually a very easy person to satisfy. To be able to join such a good guild and see the person she yearned for every day, Xuanai was very satisfied. Perhaps seeing the envy in Xuanai's heart, Mira held Xuanai's hand and said mischievously, "Speaking of which, Xuanai seems to like Noah very much. Why don't you come with us and become Noah's bride?" Lucy was taken aback. Clearly, she did not expect Mila to suddenly say such a thing. Become Lord Noah's bride? Xuanai was also shocked. Her pretty face flushed red as she resisted the temptation in her heart and shook her head vigorously. How can that be? A person like me isn't worthy of Lord Noah. You can't say that. Mira tapped Xuanai's cheek reproachfully. Xuanai is a very outstanding girl. She's so cute, and as a sorcerer, she's also very outstanding. There's no reason why she's not worthy of someone. That's right, Lisana said in a mischievous manner. Moreover, even if you don't want to, Brother Noah might just eat you up. Eat. Lucy's face also flushed red. Clearly, she was starting to let her imagination run wild. There's no such thing. Xuanai shook her head repeatedly. Lord Noah isn't that kind of person. Unfortunately, Lisana said to Xuanai's words with a hidden meaning. Indeed, Brother Noah is a very proper person. His usual behavior is almost full marks. Regardless of whether it's a girl or a child, he's very gentle. He's not the kind of person who would casually attack a girl. However, Brother Noah is also a very decisive person. If he thinks that it's necessary, he definitely won't shrink back at the last minute. Lisana changed the topic and said angrily, Xuanai, if you took the initiative to seduce Brother Noah, he definitely wouldn't mind eating you up. Xuanai's face was completely red as she spoke in a mosquito-like voice. There's no such thing. What Lisana said is probably true. Mira smiled helplessly. Perhaps in places that we don't know, Noah has attacked other girls before. Not perhaps, Lisana corrected. Of course there is. If Noah was there, he would definitely feel ashamed. That was because all those guesses had hit the nail on the head. Well, although Noah is a perfect person in all aspects, he's still a man after all. Lucy smiled awkwardly as she tried to smooth things over. Even if he's a bit of a playboy, it's nothing strange, right? You can't speak up for him like that, Lucy. Lisana pouted. You can't be a playboy. We'll get jealous too. Undoubtedly we'll get jealous, but we can't really get angry at him. Mira smiled. After all, if we really get angry at him for being a playboy, Lisana and I won't be able to obtain happiness together. Yeah, Lisana said in annoyance. It's really too easy for him. The few young ladies immediately looked at each other. Soon after, they all burst out laughing. All right, it's time to get down to business. Mira held a seal in her hand and came in front of the naked Xuanai. She squatted down, looked at her side abdomen, and gently stroked a coat of arms on it. That was the guild coat of arms of Sabertooth. The reason why Xuanai was stripped naked was because of this coat of arms. Looking at this coat of arms, Mira raised her head, looked at Xuanai, and smiled slightly. Just cover this coat of arms, right? Yes. Xuanai nodded without any hesitation. Sorry to trouble you, Master Mira. Mira nodded with a smile, raised the seal in her hand, and stamped it on top of it. In the next moment, a pure white fairy coat of arms covered the previous saber-tooth coat of arms and appeared on Xuanai's side abdomen. At this point, Xuanai officially became a member of Fairy Tale. Stroking the pure white coat of arms on her body, Xuanai smiled from the bottom of her heart. This will do. Mira stood up and held Xuanai's hand. Let's go, Noah is still waiting for you. Only then did Xuanai react and nodded her head. Chapter 1693. At the same time, in the hall outside the room where Mira, Lisanna, Xuanai, and Lucy were staying, Noah was sitting in front of a sofa with a box in his hand. Looking at the box in his hand, Noah smiled helplessly. I didn't expect that I would only remember their existence now. Fortunately, I didn't directly forget about it. Otherwise, it would be a bit of a waste. The things in the box had indeed been forgotten by Noah for quite some time. Looking at the time in the outside world, the things in the box had been left and used by Noah for more than 7 years. It was only today that Noah remembered it and asked Makarov to go back to Magnolia to find the box in his room and bring it here. With them, I think that Xuanai's strength should be a level higher, right? Noah intended to give the things in the box to Xuanai. Consider it as making up for the suffering that girl has suffered in the past 7 years. This was Noah's idea. After all, Noah had to bear part of the responsibility for Xuanai's unhappy 7 years. Moreover, Xuanai had already joined Fairy Tale and was already one of Noah's important companions. In addition, the person who led Xuanai into Fairy Tale was Noah, and even the person who made Xuanai a magic shooter and a star elf archmage was Noah. It was reasonable for Noah to give the things in the box to Xuanai. Just as Noah was thinking about this, a burst of sweet laughter and panicked voices came from the room, attracting Noah's attention. Then Noah heard such a conversation. Wait! Lady Mira! Lady Lisanna! Xuanai! What's wrong? Don't you have to hurry up and go out? Big brother Noah is still waiting for you.